We're going to call the meeting of the Board of Trustees, the meeting of April 14th, 2015 to order, please, with a roll call.
Veronica Frankel.
Present.
Howard Rosenberg.
Present.
Lisa Ruggiero.
Present.
Nick Smith.
Here.
Angie Taylor.
I am here.
John Mayer.
Here.
Logan Carlson. Barbara McClory present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we stand for the pledge, please? And I see we have Luther Mack in the audience. Mr. Gray Reed's.
We were way back.
Yeah, we went way back. Would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. A motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. President, before you do it, I'd like to make a motion that for a couple of changes on the agenda. First of all, I move that agenda. Where is it? Is this? Oh, I don't see my agenda item on here now. Okay.
6? Is that what you're looking for?
What? Yes, that agenda item, the 106, I'll be removed from the agenda.
106. And
then also that we that the agenda be reordered so that we take on agenda item number 1.07 before we go to agenda item 1.05.
okay.
Would you say that one more
Yes.
time?
Yes, Trustee Ruggiero.
Thank you.
I am asking that agenda item 1.06 be removed for a future consideration at this point, and that so that we make sure that we have appropriate coverage for our meeting. That agenda item 1.07 be moved to precede agenda item 1.05.
Point of clarification, are you asking to accept the agenda with those adjustments?
Yes, I am.
That's your motion? I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried unanimously, like the record show. Okay, so we'll go then to item 107. Who's handling 107? Yes, Mr. Malloy.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and members of the board and Madam Superintendent. My name is Mike Malloy, M-A-L-L-O-Y. I'm an attorney, and I have been asked by the superintendent and by the officers of this board to consider accepting a position in the short term as separate legal counsel to the Board of Trustees, separate and apart from the Office of General Counsel that exists within the district. I want to point out that there is precedent for this within the state of Nevada. The Clark County School District Board of Trustees has had separate counsel for the Board of Trustees for a period of some years. This was also suggested approximately 1.5 years ago by a couple of the trustees, namely Trustee Ruggiero and one of the others. That didn't happen then. It is suggested as appropriate now, given the recent history of the board with issues pertaining to legal issues. And so I have offered my services to the board. I know I've talked to some of you, and I thought that if there was any appetite to do that, it should be placed on the public agenda, and that's why it is on here. This agenda item, if approved, would approve retention of my law firm, Mopin, Cox & Lagoy. We by the way, my law firm represented the Board of Trustees and the school district going back to the 1980s through and including up to and about 2001, 2002 on a full-time basis, that we served as your only legal counsel for the board and the district. At that time, historically, the trustees determined that it was appropriate to hire in-house counsel, and that was done when the superintendent was, I believe, Mr. Hager. It was suggested by his predecessor, Dr. Nebgen, and since then there has been in-house counsel for the district, and that counsel has also served as counsel to the trustees as such. For a lot of reasons, it is felt, I suggest appropriately, that it would be better to separate those roles. And so what this agenda item would permit would be separating them, appointing my law firm, principally me. I'd be the primary contact at my law firm. We have other people in my firm, other attorneys who have had public entity representation experience, including other school districts and other legal entities, including the airport authority when Mr. Luther Mack was on the board of trustees of the airport authority. So the point is, we've had experience in public entity representation, and we consider that one of our concentration areas. I would do this on an independent contractor basis, not as an employee of the district, and I would offer to do it at a significantly reduced hourly rate as needed from my normal rate, which would be discounted by this agreement. This would be for the short term and until such time as you may determine what to do in the long term about separate legal counsel for the board. So part of this agenda would also approve, if that's the desire of the board, sending out a request for proposals to other law firms to serve as independent legal counsel to the board on a longer term basis. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but that's what this agenda item is about.
Does anyone have any questions? Then the chair would entertain a motion.
I move that we accept this.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same signal. Carries unanimous. Let the record show, and you can take your place right up here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being with us. We need authority in all these matters. Okay. Then we'll go to agenda item 105, public comment. If you have not filled out a card, please do so. I do have some people here that want to speak under public comment. First is Olivia Kraft. Well,
good afternoon. My name is Satila Croft, and I, as many of your constituents, are less than satisfied with the way the school board has handled its duties and responsibilities, especially prior to the election of the current board. However, for all of your shortcomings, we, the citizens of Washoe County, elect this board to be accountable to us, the voters. I feel very strongly that our system of limited government was intended to be broken down to the lowest level to keep the power in the hands of the people. This is why we have duly elected local entities, such as the Washoe County School Board. The system of education for our children was always meant to be kept at the local level, where us, the citizens with a vested interest in your activities and choices, keep our voices relevant and important for our children. Therefore, I wish to voice my strong opposition to allowing the state to insert itself into this body in any way. This includes diluting our power through our unconstitutional state appointments to this duly elected local body. This intrusion into how we run our educational system must be fought with all of our abilities, including seeking legal recourse. Where we are allowed this, it wouldn't be long before you, our elected officials, become irrelevant as they stack the deck against us and mandate what we do and how we do it. I'm also strongly against allowing former Superintendent Martinez to have anything to do with the education or interaction with any Washoe County school children. The circumstances of his departure, along with the settlement, should preclude him from returning in any capacity. The governor, like the president, has limited powers in his executive power and current events and cannot insert his will into our local situation. I know that Mr. Martinez still has supporters, but he has his detractors as well. His being such a polarizing figure, it behooves us to leave the past behind and ensure he doesn't detract from this body's duties and responsibilities to the children and parents of Washoe County. In conclusion, I ask this board to stand strong and united in not allowing outside forces, no matter how powerful or popular they may seem, to interfere or interject themselves in our efforts to continuously improve the level of education for our children, not only need but deserve. I leave you with this question. You should hire a new attorney. I strongly recommend it. Isn't it reasonable to expect school boards in communities where there is a strong commitment to patriotism and the American way to resist historical perspectives that are contrary to these values? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. We should appreciate public comment. Next is Brock Maloff. I probably butchered that because...
Not as bad as Ira Hansen did.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Brock Maloff, for the record. I am the president of the Transgender Allies Group here out of Reno, Nevada. And, recently this august board passed a great policy that's very forward-looking and appropriate for the days and age that we live in. This district has wisely and proactively enacted a policy that has been thoughtful, appropriate, and a legal process meeting all local, state, and federal guidelines. It is important for this board to note that this policy is being used by certain individuals in the Nevada legislature to create discord and controversy in their efforts to marginalize and segregate. Yes, that is what the proponents have said, to segregate transgender and gender nonconforming students from the mainstream educational opportunities. I urge you to recognize the positive and encouraging feedback from the greater Northern Nevada community channeled through the articles and opinion columns published in the Reno Gazette-Journal, and here is the copy with my little buddy Cece on the front. Okay. That these columns published in the Reno Gazette-Journal. Since the policy went into effect and the articles were published, I have been receiving many calls and emails from parents who are grateful for the help in helping advocate for their children to have a fair and equal chance to succeed in school. I also want to call your attention to two recently published studies. The first is from the from Nevada data presented at the American Public Health Association meeting, which shows discrimination increases emotional distress amongst transgender persons in Nevada. But knowledge of state laws protecting are extremely protective against emotional distress. The second is from the data presented at the Nevada Public Health Association, in which the study suggests that young transgender adults are at increased risk for behavioral health problems compared to their older counterparts. There is an urgent need to reach transgender young adults with culturally sensitive programs to address sexual health, substance use, and emotional well-being. Washoe County School District Policy 9201 and Administrative Regulation 5161 are compliant with federal and state laws and guidelines. They have been carefully thought out and based on evidence-based, successful methods used in other districts around the country. Having these guidelines in place offer a chance for success to all students in Washoe County and help mitigate the marginalization and stigma that have existed in the past. Additionally, as the board who has been the first to enact such a policy within this state, you can be proud of the fact that your stance against discrimination and for helping each individual student find a path to excel by its very nature is supported by public health research, as has helped save young people's lives. In order for this success to continue, I suggest that this board issue a statement on the district's positive experience of inclusion of all students and clarify how AB 375, currently on the floor of the Assembly, will harm the young people that are in your care. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and taking your time to address us. We appreciate it. Next is Carol Feinberg.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I was so happy to see that you have just voted to retain the attorney firm of Maupin, Cox in Lagoy. It is a well-respected firm with high integrity here in Northern Nevada. What I wonder is why we must retain the district's legal counsel. Are we under contract with him? I think that you have been led astray on more than one occasion, 3 that I can count in recent history, and by that legal counsel, and he should be perfunctorily dismissed. And the firm of Maupin, Cox, and Lagoy should be retained permanently. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I do have another comment, but they wanted to talk under superintendent selection. Is that correct?
Who is it?
I don't know. What's the name?
Sorry. The name is Edward Vento.
You want to speak under the superintendent or now?
I can speak under the superintendent.
Okay. And we have the last but not least public comment from a lady named Tracy Davis.
A very lovely lady, John. Just so we're clarifying.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people who would agree to that statement.
President, Mayor, members of the board, of course, good afternoon. I am Tracy, for the record, Tracy Davis, interim superintendent for the Washoe County School District. In light of things that have happened in recent events, I've had a chance to reflect on one of the most important responsibilities a school board has to do is to hire its superintendent. It is this employee who drives student achievement through the vision and the mission and all the other things that happen in the district to make it a well-working machine. Working as a team of 8, we have become very granular about kids. We are every kid by name and face to graduation. If you ask any of the district leadership team, if you talk to principals, we're identifying kids now who we are trying to get to the finish line. And with that being said, I fully support the decision-making process as we move forward for hiring the superintendent. And that decision is not about me, it is about the 7 of you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Well spoken. Okay, is there anybody else that wanted to make public comment? I don't have any other cards. Okay, if not, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is 201 board reports. And we'll start with Logan, our student representative from Worcester High School IB program. You had a nice 2 weeks vacation. Great. And you're ready to filled out all those college applications and everything?
I've already accepted admission at UNR. There's no more applications to fill out.
All right. That's great news. Great news.
I'll be your advisor.
Still undecided.
Within 8 years.
I'm
Don't
an
worry.
undeclared major. I have a designated.
No, we can fix that. Don't worry.
I don't know if you can advise someone majoring in computer science.
Oh, I know all about it.
The only thing I really have to say is the day before break we had the Student Data Symposium, which is the proposed counterpart to the Trustee Data Summit, and I worked with the Office of Accountability, and it was a huge success. We had about 30 students, and then about 15 people from the district and representatives from the schools on the administration level, and it was a lot of fun.
You know, you came up with that idea back in September.
I did not. It was
who
all
did?
the Office of Accountability.
It was them. No, they twisted your arm, did they?
Yes, they did.
Oh, but I hear it was a great success, and the kids really enjoyed it, and they really found out a lot about the school district and how things function. And surely you're the leader of putting it together as president of the Student Advisory Board. So thank you for your efforts. And hopefully this will maintain a yearly tradition now, following the regular summit to have a student summit. So that's tremendous.
I would like him to add. Why don't you briefly talk about the safe and sober fundraising?
Oh,
Do a
okay.
shout out because
So
Ben has a dog that needs walking. I do too.
okay, so every senior class has a safe and sober when they graduate, and usually Worcester's is at the Coconut Bowl. I don't know if it is at other schools, but this year's senior class wanted to do more of a trip, and so we're doing a trip to Disneyland. And so we leave like 8 o'clock after graduation night. We drive all night to get to Disneyland the next morning. We play at the park for however long, and then we drive all night to get back Sunday or Monday morning, and it's going to be a lot of money to make that trip happen. So if you want to donate, or if you want to do something like that, I don't know who to contact, but someone at Worcester would probably be able to point you in the right direction.
So I'll just add to that because I am a Worcester alum, and I did participate in this trip when I was at Worcester. They are doing chores for a day, I believe, this weekend, and you can pay $75, and 2 Worcester students will come, 2 or 3 Worcester students with a chaperone will come to your home. They'll pull weeds. They'll clean your car. They said they'd load a U-Haul. They would walk dogs, Ben. And you are a fellow alumni, so I want to put a little pressure on you. It's only $75 to have your dogs walk around the block. So more information, contact Worcester, but I think it's a great deal if you need some work done around your home. They will be supervised by an adult chaperone, and it goes to a good cause because it ensures that our kids are safe and sober. After graduation, they'll be fully supervised, and I think it's a great way to celebrate the hard work that they put into graduating. So a little shout out for Worcester. So.
Great.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, next board reports.
Well,
just keep talking.
Okay, I'll just keep talking. So just one thing that I want to talk about is our Safe and Healthy Schools Commission. I've been working with our chief of staff preparing for our meeting on Monday. We have a full agenda. We'll actually be starting to have conversations about safety audits and talking about what current policies we have that impact safe and healthy schools. We'll have a legislative update. We'll talk about data. That's right. Our data guru over here is going to talk a little bit about data and the importance and how it ties in with how ensuring our schools are safe and healthy impacts student achievement, which is why we are all here. So that's Monday at 1 o'clock here in the boardroom, and I hope everyone can attend. So thank you.
Very nice. Mr. Smith, Nick Smith.
Some of my board report's going to be fairly quick. It was spring break for my kids, so we enjoyed some spring break activities. Just meeting with a few parent groups in town past that. Other than that, we had a great time at Six Flags. Didn't do anything too official.
Let the record show.
Yeah, let the record show the roller coasters are amazing. But actually, I do need to take this time, Mr. Mayor, to ask that I excuse myself around 6:15. I'm going to be giving the opening speech, the Welcome to Washoe County speech, to about 1,100 high school students who are competing in the Skills USA competition this year. It's going to be held in Reno, so I'm excited to get to do that.
Well, we'll excuse you. Just get up and leave and say hello to the kids for all of us.
Well, dude, I'm super excited because I competed in that about 11 years ago in video technology, and oddly enough, I despise technology now. I wouldn't have thought it.
Don't tell the kids.
But I won't tell them.
Don't tell them, okay. Vice President Dr. Taylor.
All right, just real quickly, we had board reports the week following our board meeting. 2 days of reports from every department in the district. It was really informative for a new trustee like myself, and I'm continue to be impressed with the staff that we have here in the Washoe County School District. The great job that they do and how they're progressing towards the objectives and those initiatives in the strategic plan. So I want to thank them again for that. 2 days very well spent. And then I went to the TMCC High School Assembly, which was really cool. I hadn't been to a high school assembly in a long time, and they're just about as I remember them to be. But it was a lot of fun, and I got a chance to take some selfies with some of the kids and speak to them a little bit just about my story. And then many of us spent the last weekend with the Nevada Association of School Boards, Part 2 of orientation. So that's my report.
Great. Dr. McClure?
The last couple of weeks, the only thing that I've done in relationship to schools is to attend baseball games with my grandson. He's either participating or we're watching.
All right.
Mr. Rosenberg?
The 2-week vacation provided time for some of the teachers and our student teachers to get together at the university and discuss education. I am really amazed at how deeply our teachers feel about what's going on in the world and in the world of education. It has changed and changed drastically, and they're up with it, and they keep up with it. I felt very guilty not have kept up with it as much as I should have, particularly where the technology part is concerned. Well, I found a real way of handling the technology. Are you ready? If it's not doing what it's supposed to, push a button. Any button. Doesn't make any difference. It won't blow up. Now, those of us that are of a certain age know that if you push something you shouldn't, the damn thing would blow up. So we were always careful. Don't have to be. Hit it. It can't hit you back.
It cannot.
Wonderful. It's been a good couple of weeks.
Veronica, Frankel?
Yes, it's been a quieter couple of weeks without a lot of school visits because of the break. And I've had a number of conversations one-on-one with many different constituents and parents had the opportunity. And most of what I'm hearing is extremely positive. Very excited about that. I also want to mention that Trustee Taylor's presentation at TMCC High School had a tremendous impact on the kids there, and I can say that from certainty because my daughter was in the selfie with her and goes to TMCC High School, and they're still talking about the inspiration that she provided, so thank you for that. The one meeting I did attend last week was the Regional Planning Governing Board meeting, where I'm a liaison for this board to that board. One item that was discussed does have some relationship to the school district, and it pertains to the work that TMRPA, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency, will be doing around basically a residential needs study. And we've contracted with them, the district has, through a work program for them to work with us on that information, which we'll probably hear about a little bit today during the report from our Chief Operations Officer. But I do want to mention that they approved a contract with a very reputable organization that has done this work in many states. So I think the work will be done very well. I'm excited to see it go forward.
Great. Mine's going to be short and sweet, I hope. I agree with the staff reports. That was the way to do it. We got it in 2 days, and each built on the other, and it was better than having one every 2 weeks and losing what the other ones say. So I felt that was very well done. And I've got to say, on the balanced calendar, I want to tell, I was over at Deer Park, which is close to Sparks High School, and there were maybe 5, 6 kids sitting around benches, and this was in the afternoon. So I walked over and started talking to them, and they were working on a project for their intercession. And it was amazing to see the interaction of the kids, one to another, and finishing this report that they've done. And I just said, "Oh, do you like intersection?" And I said, "Yeah, we're out here in the park studying, doing a project, which is a great change from sitting in a classroom." So I just wanted to say to that. And then I spent the weekend in Indianapolis on a high visible educational endeavor, the Final Four. So I saw objects in using the angle, and kids really enjoying it. It was well worth my time. You should try it sometime. And then this last weekend, we had our Association of School Boards had a conference this last weekend, and it was well attended by our board. In fact, I think we had the most of any school district at the conference. But the highlight of the conference, by all means, was in the second day after lunch, the communications department, led by Irene Payne and Charles, put on a presentation on social media, and some of the other districts thanked me that they were able to come and give their presentation. And it's things like that not only do we receive salutes and applause for having such a wonderful department do the presentation, but it is kind of like building a network throughout the state. And I want to thank you and your department for the job well done. And that's about it.
President Mayor, if I might indulge you for another moment, there's something I neglected to mention in my report. I am a member of the Reno Philharmonic Chorus.
Yes.
And I wanted to let folks know that we are singing with a chorus from the University of Nevada, and we got to rehearse all together with 200 voices for the performance we'll be doing this weekend. I got to talk with a number of the students at UNR, many of whom came up through the Washoe County School District, and attribute their passion for music to their experience in the music programs in their schools. We will also be rehearsing for the first time tonight, and I too may have to leave early to go to our very first rehearsal with the symphony, which is also going to be filled with students from UNR who again started their music careers in Washoe County schools. So I want to do a shout out to our music teachers throughout the district because you definitely make an impact, and it's going to be felt this weekend at the Reno Phil. So thank you.
So we'll have to keep that in mind as we're discussing all this, so that we can get you guys out without missing too much of the agenda. So we speed on. Okay, we'll have the superintendent, interim superintendent. I'm sorry.
Thank you, John.
I think of you as the superintendent.
We had our first state meeting with NDE based on what we want to move for special education, and we will be coming back to the board sometime this summer talking about the work. But we've really been out getting the teachers, parents, and looking at the pieces to make it a better place for all kids. This week I actually had an interview with the Nevada Business Magazine about the work we've been doing for kids in our district, and it will be featured next month, Irene? Okay, next month. But I'm talking about what family engagement, intercession, like all the things that we're doing to support kids. So we're excited about that. Lindsay had me in the legislature last week testifying on CSR, and it was interesting this time, but Lindsay is really great at getting you coached, and even when you have to get coached to the last minute when they add an amendment and I have to throw out my speech and just fly off the cuff, but I think we did a really good job talking about class size reduction. spent a lot of time over spring break having meetings with a lot of the community members who invited me to lunch, wanted to get to know me and talk about things in the district and how we were doing and how we were moving. So that was great. John, I am so sad that you did not talk about our visit to the food bank.
Oh, I forgot.
We went to the food bank last week, but what was so great about it, as you know, we have a lot of kids that struggle with eating on the weekends, and we do a backpack program. However, it is more economical for us to do food pantries, so we're looking at some of our high-need schools. How can we do food pantries, because we know that they have younger siblings and those kids aren't eating, but partnering with them with the food bank. So that's going to be awesome just to continue to help our students. And then finally, of course, I was with the WEF and we did a donor meeting, and we were talking about family engagement, parent university, our home visits, which I will be doing a meeting on Saturday in Sacramento about the work that we've been doing here in Washoe. So lots of good work going on. I know we're going to report today about the graduation rate, but we just finished intercession, and really, I think the staff is to be commended, teachers, principals. We are really trying to get every kid to the finish line. So thank all the people who worked on all the summer stuff and for the work that you do.
Thank you. And in fact, this is one example of partnership with the school district and the community. The food bank already has, I think, she told us 3 pantries in 3 different schools here. But we took a tour, and if we can increase the cooperation between these different community venues, I think it benefits everybody. And it was well worth our time, I think, don't you?
Great.
Great. Okay, moving on to approval of the consent agenda items 3.02 through 3.11.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
President Mayor, I would like to pull, I just want to hear a little bit more about it. 3.06, approval of Dodson Elementary Sanitary Sewer Pump Station easement.
3.06?
Yes.
Okay, any others that need to be pulled? Then I'll entertain a motion to accept agenda items 3.2 through 3.5 and 3.7 through 3.11.
So moved.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Smith. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. Carries unanimous. Let the record show. Okay, 3.06. Good afternoon.
Chris Cobb, Chief Facilities Management Officer, with Mr. Boster, our planner, and he can speak to this quite eloquently.
Yes, ma'am. Mike Boster for the record.
I'd just like to hear a little bit, just have you present it publicly. I've had
Certainly.
some phone calls on it.
Oh, you bet. Well, we were approached by the city of Reno a few months ago regarding an existing sewer lift station, which is, not to get too graphic on what a sewer lift station is, but it moves waste, yes, from one location to another. And when there's a change in elevation, there's a pump that needs to lift the stuff to a different elevation to get it to the treatment plant. This one's been in place since 1974, sitting there at Dodson, and it's reached its useful life. It's not functioning properly any longer. So the city of Reno is proposing to replace that with a new lift station, which is located a little bit down from, not in the same location, but I think it's about 50 feet south of the existing lift station. They're going to give us 2 parking spaces in place of the old lift station that's failed, or is failing, I should say. So we are getting something for that imposition of having the construction going on and also removing the old lift station and constructing the new.
Okay, so so I have a lot of constituents in this area that complain of and you may not be able to answer this, they're concerned about that there's a very harsh sewer odor in that area with all of this sewer work being done. So they're concerned about, is this going to make that problem worse? Is this going to alleviate some of that problem?
Well, I can't say specifically that it will or will not. I don't know what the source of the sewer smell would be.
Mhm.
However,
It's sewer. They call it sewer gas.
Yes, sewer
gotcha.
gases.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I'm not an expert, so forgive my.
Typically, with
Certainly.
the lift station, in essence, you have a holding tank it goes into and a pump that pumps it up, and then it can gravity feed just
Mhm.
because you have an elevation. At times, you can, and it could be because the useful life of this is past. Is there more stuff in the holding tank than is usual? Usually, you have at some point a float that kicks on the pump. Reducing gases, there's a million different ideas out there. I've yet to see one that works concretely. If you've been to Shields, there's days at Shields that there's a neat wafting from whether it's the sewer line there or the treatment plant across the way. To be able to tell you point blank that the gas isn't going to go away, I'd be lying to you. It may improve it by putting a new system in. We met out there with facility staff and the City of Reno staff to look at a space that was viable on site. We feel we found one, and we're partnering with our agency and helping them correct this issue. Outside of that, there's not a lot of you have to deal with gravity, and unfortunately, there's no gravity to get beyond this point, so they do have to have a lift station. The other option would be it's out in the street somewhere. The manner that we're doing that, we're working with them. So, we can ask City of Reno if that gassing, has it been because of failure at the site, and get back to you and provide information. But most likely, you could still have potential smells coming from it because there is a holding tank process that it goes through and then it's pumped out of.
I would like that, just because I've had some calls on it. Neighbors close by, so I would appreciate if you could come back with that information.
Absolutely.
Okay, is there a motion?
Just to clarify,
Okay.
if I can ask. So essentially, our providing this easement is going to enable them to do the upgrade that you described.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that's the decision that's before us today. And I too would like to hear this a little bit more about what they're planning, what as part of this upgrade, what can be done, what are they trying to do, and maybe it is about the age of the current system. But to get that information would be helpful.
It could be. As I said, there's been many ideas. One was they built these neat charcoal filters that went on top of manholes. Even those have not worked well. I've seen them installed. They're still, there's been a lot of ideas, but as I said, I will get with City of Reno and get some information back if, potentially it's been holding more and that's part of the problem. Or and with this design, is there anything that they include with the design that might, some of those new technologies that attempt to help with any gassing smells?
Mr. Rosenberg.
It can't be any worse than it is.
Most likely not.
That's what I would worry about more than anything else. Putting something new in and having it much worse than it is now.
Well, it did happen. There's been a lot of sewer issues in
Okay. That's, I think, at the very least, we need to know that it's not going to make it worse.
Two, you ought to have them call her city council person because McCarran's famous for those lift stations all up and down McCarran Boulevard, and to have one last since 1974 is a pretty good deal.
Perlani Lane.
Yeah, Perlani Lane is a good
That one
example.
just was replaced 2 years ago in Sparks.
Yeah, see, they're all over the. I don't know what else to do. Is there a motion to accept this then?
So moved. I move that we accept the agreement.
Second?
Are we waiting for the additional information or?
I want to hear the additional information, but it's not necessarily going to keep me from voting on allowing us to help
To
Reno
do
move
that.
forward with this.
I see. Okay.
It's giving them the easement.
I do want you to come
We
back.
will work with our.
And prior to it happening, if you hear of any information.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm good.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. So carried. And I'll let the record show unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 4.01, legislative items. You still smiling? Is that because it's over half done?
It is.
That's great. What is it? One more day after?
49 days.
49.
Well,
who's counting?
I mean, they show it on their little homepage, so I happen to know. It's not like I have a countdown.
Really?
Thank you, President Mayor. For the record, Lindsay Anderson. I'm used to saying for the Washoe County School District. I guess everybody knows that here. I'm here to give you a legislative update. We are over halfway finished, which is exciting. 49 days to go. Friday was a big day. It was the first deadline for any non-exempt bills or non-financial bills to get out of their first committee. So it's an exciting day because a lot of bills that you don't know if they're going to live, they die. And no bill's really ever dead, right? You've heard this before. They can always be resurrected in any possible form. But at least it helps us get a little better handle on how many bills we should be following. But just as a point of information, some of the bills that did not make it out of their committee, so are no longer, at least the bill numbers and the content of the bill are no longer, will have no further action. The bills that would have either repealed and replaced or just repealed the Common Core or the Nevada Academic Content Standards both died. The bill that would have allowed for appointed school boards also died. The bill that would have required cursive be part of the standards, that bill died. So those are just kind of some of the hot topics. I know in the legislative report that we sent over the weekend, it had a whole list of other bills that will have no further action. So that's a more exciting list. But there are plenty of things that are still alive, plenty of things that we'll continue to work on. The priorities that we're working on right now are, we'll start with the bill that the Washoe County School District sponsored. That's Senate Bill 19, which would allow school boards to pose advisory questions. That bill did get out of committee, and so it's waiting for a vote on the Senate floor. Along with that is Senate Bill 411, which is a bill that Senator Smith sponsored with us in mind that would allow us to pose a binding ballot question on the 2016 election, general election ballot, to raise taxes to fund new school buildings. So if for those of you that were around in 2007, it's a very similar process to the Senate Bill SB 154 committee that was created then. Group of community stakeholders, lots of different groups represented, economic development, business, teachers, labor, would all come together and decide what that tax package, for lack of a better word, would look like. And that would be whatever they came up with would then be on the ballot that would raise money to address our school facility needs. So with those two bills in mind, I will say there is some confusion between the two about binding versus advisory and which way we prefer to go. In my opinion, the binding ballot question to build schools is a more important priority than having the authority to pose advisory questions that we don't really have something in mind for at the particular moment. So I'll keep you posted on what the negotiation looks like there, but those two bills both made it out of committee, and so they're still alive. Additionally, in terms of ballot questions, there's a bill, Senate Bill 380, that's also Senator Smith's bill that modifies the rules around what district employees, for example, can do on a ballot question. So it's around ethics violations. You may have heard there was some conflict in the Clark County School District around district staff providing information or doing things on their ballot question that were in violation of ethics. And so this bill would basically allow someone like me, for example, to send an email with information to the PAC that would be putting on the ballot question, something with a nominal expense that would just be, again, providing factual information to the committee to be able to run the ballot question appropriately. And then two other important bills I want you to know about are Assembly Bill 447 and sort of connected to that are Assembly Bill 483. 447 is around the teacher evaluation. And so there's a lot of conversation. That's the Teachers and Leaders Council that I think Trustee Frankel sits on, made recommendations. Basically, the bill was introduced a little bit late, to be honest, and it had a quick hearing, but it was moved out of committee without any amendments, including without the amendment that either the TLC proposed or that the Washoe County School District proposed that would allow us to continue to use our Danielson framework for teacher evaluations. So we'll have another opportunity to do that on the Senate side when that bill is heard in the Senate Education Committee, but that's a very important priority for our district and for the state, frankly. And then connected to that is around pay for performance, a bill that would require us to set aside a portion of our budget to give incentives or bonuses to teachers that we identified as high performing, which is all great unless you don't have the right evaluation system by which to identify those outstanding teachers. So that's why those two things are connected. We need to make sure that the evaluation system is fully defensible and valid before we start handing out money in terms of bonuses. So those are just sort of some of the top priorities. Our staff has been amazing. It was really crazy last week with lots of late night hearings and lots of me texting in the middle. Superintendent Davis showed up to testify on a bill that when we sat down basically said, we thought we wanted that bill, but now we want this bill. So here's an amendment that crosses out everything here, and here's the new stuff. So that's what she's referring to when you have to sort of be on your feet about, well, we don't even really have a chance to read this. We don't know what to say about this. So we kept our comments really kind of at the 30,000 foot level. But that's kind of the way it's going right now. Lots of things being crossed out and added with new language. So I know there's a lot of bills and a lot of information you probably are getting from lots of different people. But if there's something in particular you want to talk about, I'd be happy to do that. Otherwise, we'll just continue to send you our weekly updates with a summary of what hearings happened, what bills were work sessioned, links to the bills and the amendments, so that you can review those. And I know you get reports from NASB. I know Superintendent Davis gets one from NAS. So there's lots of information out there at your fingertips. So I just want to be here to support that.
Any questions, comments, Mr. Smith?
I know that they're expressing the PSA. I think that's Senator Hammond's bill. How is that looking like? Because that could affect our dollars here.
That's right. So Senate Bill 302 discusses education savings accounts. And so I would tell you that's one of the bills that when it was moved out of committee, I believe it was Thursday or Friday, was highly amended in a very conceptual format that hasn't been written into a bill format yet. So it's really hard to weigh in on what it looks like. There was a number of changes he made to the way the original bill looked. I think it's geared much more now towards students with special needs. Some change language around homeschooling. So when call them a mock-up, when the amendment is available, we'll review it and I'd be happy to give you some feedback, but it's a little hard to respond because we don't know exactly what that conceptual amendment is going to look like and what that would mean for our district.
Okay.
But it's alive.
How about the Achievement District?
The Achievement School District is Assembly Bill 448. That also was amended, not as conceptually. There is some proposed language in the document we sent you. There should be a link to what that amendment looks like. So a lot of the concerns I think that we expressed about that bill were addressed in the amendment, which is nice to have your concerns heard and responded to. I think there's still plenty of questions, particularly around facilities and other operational services that would be provided to those schools in terms of transportation and nutrition services, special education, health, nursing, that kind of thing that haven't really been fully fleshed out. But the bill did move out of committee and is awaiting a vote on the assembly floor. So still alive in an amended version.
Lindsay, you mentioned Senator Smith's bill, Senate Bill 411, and which is great that it got a chance to stay alive because it got there so late. I was reading all of the entities that would be involved on the committee or putting together, and I noticed that we had our superintendent was on there, but there was no member of the Board of Trustees on there.
So we can certainly amend the bill to change the committee structure. Again, we really just copy and pasted what was done in 2007 in the SB 154 committee. I would need to double check to make sure, again, that there's no ethical violations in terms of having you or a member of the board participate in crafting the actual ballot question language to imply that we supported that actual ballot question. I also think there's value in being pretty hands-off and allowing the community to come up with a solution that they think best meets our needs and allow them to pitch that on our behalf. I think that gives it a little bit of extra credibility, but there certainly will be an opportunity on the assembly side for us to make amendments to the membership of that committee. And if that's something the board wants to do, I can certainly take that forward.
So is that something we should discuss for direction for Lindsay, or how do you suggest we deal with that? I mean, certainly if there's we certainly don't want an ethical issue in that. And I know maybe we should look at that end of it first, because that may make the whole conversation moot. Why don't we start there and then
That's
maybe
great.
go
I'd be
forward?
happy to do some research and find out what the reason was originally for not having a member of the board on there, and see if there's any merit to that, if there's a legal issue, or if that was just a point of discussion.
Okay.
Be happy to do
Thank
that.
you.
Any other questions? Thank you for your hard work. I know it's really busy down there and long hours. Okay, moving on to the next one is 5.01, approval of the fiscal year 2015-16 tentative budget for possible action. Seems kind of funny that she's just talking about not knowing how much money's available, and here we come up with a tentative budget in the same meeting. It kind of is lost, you know.
They go hand in hand, actually.
All right, you ready for us to dive in?
Sure, go ahead.
President Mayer, Interim Superintendent Davis, members of the board, Student Representative Carlson. For the record, Tom Szynski, Chief Financial Officer for the school district, and with me is our outstanding Budget Director, Mike Schroeder. As you did point out, President Mayer, this is the tentative budget. So just a continuation of the process that we've been going down the path with you, the process that led us to the budget workshop where you got to see our budget in great detail, the two subsequent town hall meetings that we had with regard to the budget. And so now here we are on this timeline today to present to you the tentative budget. As we pointed out in the past, there's the district's NRS timelines that we're obligated to follow. And again, the tentative budget is now due on or before April 15th, and today's the 14th, so we're certainly meeting that timeline. And then there's the legislative timeline, which Lindsay outlined a little bit, and those two timelines don't necessarily match up. So as we have presented in previous board meetings, we still do have a $26.7 million deficit, and we are actively working on developing the list of solutions to solving that budget shortfall. A lot of that's going to involve the legislature and the outcomes of that and the discussions that are ongoing there. It also involve us reviewing our revenues, which we're actively doing, reviewing our expenditures not only in fiscal year 15 and fiscal year 16 to see what savings we can generate, and then looking and see what remaining reserves we have to balance the budget. And so we will be bringing that back to you, prior to adopting the final budget, which we plan to do on or before June 8th, again, part of the timeline. And so, again, just a continuation of our budget. The budget looks pretty much what you like what you've seen before. There's two adjustments in here, I believe, that Mike pointed out to me, that we have updated our grants budgets a little bit in this document from what we had previously gotten from the grants department. And we also updated our other post-employment benefits budget as well. The board item itself outlines a lot of the, what's involved in the budget, not to the level of detail that we went through in the budget workshop, but more summary format. And so I think at this juncture, I'll stop here and say, are there any questions for Mike or I on the tentative budget? I should also add that the tentative budget is per board policy 3.201, I think. I'm trying to remember that number. It's right here, 3120. I got my numbers transposed. Is it a requirement of the board that we have you adopt this tentative budget? It isn't a requirement of state law, but it's something that we developed working with this board to make sure that you're actively engaged in the budgetary process. So I think I covered all the key components in very summary format, but again, we're here to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Are there any questions? Yes, Mr. Rosenberg.
Until the legislature finishes, we don't know about money, do we? I mean, when you come right down to it.
Yeah, that's correct. And again, as part of a legislative year, we have to adopt a final budget by on or before June 8th. But once the legislature closes its business, we have, I believe, 30 days to file an amended final budget to address the things that we don't know by the adoption of the final budget.
All right, so we're approving a tentative budget.
Correct.
Just from a budgetary standpoint, Mr. President, I'm sorry if I may.
That's all right, go ahead.
Any movement at all on those areas of concern that we've discussed before, the DSA question, class size reduction, textbook waivers, any movement at all?
We've had some we continue to have active dialogue with the legislature, the State Department of Education. myself and Clark County School District have participated in providing some information with regard to not only our school district but all 17 school districts as to what the issues are around that. I know that information's been received. We've gotten a little bit of feedback on that, not negative, not positive. I mean, just that it's actively being looked at. I think what is typical for legislatures, and Lindsay's here somewhere, she can do this better than I can. I mean, a lot of the money decisions don't get made till the end. And so it's difficult it is for an accountant who's not very patient. We've got to be patient in this process, but we certainly haven't had negative conversations around those items. We've had very positive, interaction with the people that we've worked with on those, but haven't gotten the answers that we want and probably won't get them until towards the end of the legislature, if I'm answering your question.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
For both of us.
And I do know both of you are interactive with the other school districts in forming all this, and I think that's so important because if they do something over here to Washoe, something might happen over here to the other counties, and I think we got to look at it statewide. And I sure appreciate both of you. I think Jeff is one of the leaders in some of these things from Elko, and I really feel that that's what's needed is you guys working together to come up with finance plans for the whole state.
We appreciate that. We've actively engaged in the process. We'd like to say we're leading, following Interim Superintendent Davis's lead on this, working closely with Lindsay and our counterparts as much as we possibly can. We know how important it is to have an active voice.
Okay. Any other comments? Then let's see. Possible action. Yes, we need to approve the final temporary budget. Isn't that
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the tentative budget for fiscal year 2015-16.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. So carried. Let the record show unanimously. Thank you very much for all your hard work.
Thank you.
I just noticed, and I'm so sorry that I didn't notice it before, but I noticed some kids and people from Washoe Innovations High School there. I hate to have them. Could we move up their renaming 602 so they don't have to spend good study time and listening to us?
Sure, right.
Okay. We'll go to item 6. Do we need a motion for that? No, we can adjust the agenda item.
Thank you.
Welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, President Mayor, Trustees, Interim Superintendent Davis. For the record, Irene Payne, Chief Communications and Community Engagement Officer, and with me is Dr. Byron Green, Chief Student Services Officer. We have the pleasure of being in front of you today to talk about Washoe Innovations High School, the renaming and the rebranding recommendation. And to get us started, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Green.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm always honored to have the privilege to speak about Washoe Innovations High School, and hopefully in about 30 minutes, Innovations High School. Washoe Innovations High School, as many of you know, has been part of the Washoe County School District for literally decades. For many years, it was referred to as Washoe High School or just Washoe. And because of that structure or what had been happening for the students and staff at that school, it had a very negative connotation. For students who attended there as well as staff, it was typically referred to as Washoe and, oh, you have to go there, or it's that school, or I'm sure many of you have heard many of these things for many years. It has had for many years a reputation of failure, but 2 years ago, the trustees and the superintendent at the time identified Washoe Innovations High School as a priority school with the State Department of Education. And that meant that Washoe Innovations, and the school district, we're partnering to determine how we can better provide supports and services for the students who attended the school. We believe this last year, under the leadership of Taylor Harper, the principal, we've seen incredible systemic and cultural changes. We still have a long ways to go, but we also do believe that the big picture model that we have there now, and that we're grabbing scholars at an earlier age, is benefiting our school. To remind the trustees, many years the students would come as a fifth-year senior or as a senior, typically with 3 to 5 credits, and not surprisingly, they were not graduating at the end of the year. And that was why Washoe High was determined really as a failure. Now we're still targeting the same students. We're looking for students who have engagement issues, credit issues, behavior issues. But because of our fantastic accountability department, we actually have that data where we know who they are and we can get them earlier. We're trying to catch them as sophomores, and we actually can get them to graduate by their senior year. So we know, I could go on for another hour, but I know I'm going to get in trouble here with Irene. Yes, I am. But I would like to encourage any of you, if you've not had the opportunity to see Innovations High School, I would gladly take you on that tour.
Thank you. So about 3 years ago, I was in front of the Board of Trustees talking about rebranding Washoe High School to Washoe Innovations High School. And at that point, we talked about this being a multi-step process, and that in a couple of years, I would be back in front of you talking about dropping the Washoe because of, as Dr. Green said, all the negative connotations around Washoe. So that's why we're back here today. But that being said, when we went into the process, we knew that was probably going to be the outcome, but it still behooves us to actually follow best practice and go through the process to make sure that we are getting the very best outcome that really meets the needs of the scholars, the school district, and the school. So we developed a committee of 12 members that included the principal, administrators, teachers, Dr. Green, staff members, community members, parents, and also students. And that's a real focus in terms of listening to student voice as we went through this process. So we had 2 committee or focus group meetings, and we first talked about the school name because of the 2 pieces that we were looking at, the kind of logo and the school name. The school name was an easier conversation to have. So, because we really knew that, you know, the Washoe piece needed to potentially be dropped. So we had some, you know, reasonably robust conversations, but absolutely the focus group recommended that we move forward with dropping the Washoe and moving forward with Innovations High School. I would say that when we started to talk about the actual logo, the brand, then we really did have some sort of deeper conversations, because many of you may have seen the artwork at the school when you visited the school. And this has a really deep and meaningful place in the heart of those, not only the scholars, but the teaching staff at the school. And I think possibly what might be a good idea is to actually ask Principal Harper to just come up for a second and just explain this to you, because this was the basis of the existing logo. So I just want, absolutely, come on up and just explain it.
Can I? Okay.
Absolutely.
Hello, everyone, again. A couple of you have actually visited and seen this piece. This is in our entryway when you walk in, and I have Lisa here with me. She's one of our scholars. I think that what happened was at the beginning of the year we were doing a whole reculturing of the school. We had all new students, and we were really trying to kind of make it theirs. And so we started seeing these scholars that were really artists coming out of the woodwork. And one day, Liberty, who's one of our sophomores, came to school, and we were ready to have a whole school assembly. And she walked in with this huge canvas, holding it. And she's blushing. And I said, "Oh my gosh, what is that? That's beautiful." And she said, "Well, I was up all night I was inspired. I was up all night painting this, and I'm hoping we can hang it somewhere. And I said, well, tell me about what the symbolism is. She said, well, this is a hooded figure. This is how society sees us. This is how they see us. They see us in, with kind of hooded, and they don't understand us. They're kind of a mystery. And a lot of times they walk by us or they're fearful of us. And she said, that's why part of this person is still hiding behind this brick wall, because they're afraid of being judged. And she said that the wings, the color and the wings represent our potential and what we're really about and what we're capable of. And this helps me to describe what Innovations does for people like me. It's letting me come out from the darkness and really show my potential and spread my wings. So that is from there. The scholars and the staff spent a lot of time in their advisories discussing what we wanted to symbolize Innovations as far as our logo, and the logo that you'll see came from.
Yes. So the logo that is currently in use is.
Can you pass that around? Will you
absolutely
pass that around?
is using that, but it has a black background and it's really quite hard to replicate. So. Before I show you the tidied up logo, I would say that we did go through the process. So we presented a number of logo options and color palettes to the focus group. And I have a full folder that explains the whole process that we went through if anybody would like to look at that. But without a doubt, when we went to the scholars and to the staff of the school, and we actually went to over 100 scholars, they wanted this as their logo. So this is really using the existing logo, but really tidying it up. And when I say tidying it up, we've updated the font. We've given a cleaner color palette. We've taken the kind of foreboding black background away. And we've just kind of made it a little bit crisper and a little bit sharper. So Dr. Green and I have to say, we have 3 members of the focus group with us who, as you can imagine, the scholars of that school are very articulate and have very strong opinions about what they're looking for. This is the logo that we present to you along with the name for approval. But of course, rebranding is more than just tinkering around with a logo. If you don't communicate it, then it really means nothing. So we in communications were working on both a marketing plan that includes both internal communication and external communication. So that means distributing information on the school to district-wide to staff and to counselors, making sure that the signage at the school is updated and all the creative pieces around the school, so videos and the website are updated to show the new name and to show the new logo, and also to share with the public that this unique school and what is available in this unique school and what is available to our students in our school district by attending this unique school. So with that, I present, or Dr. Green and I present for your recommendation and approval the name and the logo, and we're happy to answer any questions, and some of our focus group members will be very happy to answer any questions that you may have about this.
I just want to make some statements because you use the word unique, and that school is unique, and it's unique to every time I go in there. I talk to different kids and everything, but with their uniqueness on our student advisory board has been a big help. They have stuff to say, and they know how to say it, and they really are inspiration to not only myself, but Howard, I'm sure, and some of the rest. And it just is a whole turnaround, because I can remember when Washoe was, well, if they couldn't make it in a public school, ship them off.
Mm-hmm.
ship them off,
Mhm.
ship them off. And it became known on the street as a school of thugs and unwanted and everything. And now, through the administration and Mrs. Harper's efforts and the teachers' effort, it's become a classy place. It's become a place that is unique. And I really like the work that was done on this, and I'm sure that the kids are just waiting for the button to, as Howard says on the computer, to press the button and change all the
They are.
logos to the new thing.
Yes.
So I don't have any questions, but I just want to let you know that I think this was a great effort, and we do have public comment too. So afterwards, I'll ask for public comment. Yes.
So my question is, when would this be ready? If we give you the approval today,
We'll start on it tomorrow. We have everything ready to go. We have a guideline, the corporate identity guideline for the school to use. We have the logo. We're ready to go. Obviously, the signage will take a little bit longer because we've got to put, requests in for that. But the things that are within our control, and I know it's like President Mayer said, everybody within the schools, like, bring it on. We want to drop Washoe. We want to start calling it Innovations High School. So with effect from tomorrow, it will be in Innovations High School.
with the signage,
Yes.
if we gave your approval for this, would you be able to get some proposals to us by the next board meeting so we can get it going? Or is that something we need to spend more time on? When can we get...
Well, I mean, normally what we've done in the past when we've rebranded, for example, North Star or what was our adult education, when we moved that into Rise, we just worked with our guys in facilities, and they got proposals. We sent the artwork, and we just got it done.
Oh, cool.
That's exactly what we would do. We'd start working on that tomorrow.
Then my last question is, what do we do when a new school opens? Do we have an open house for the community? What have we done in the past?
Yeah, I can speak to that. When we opened DePoli Middle School, before we actually officially opened or the start of school, we had about at least 2 weeks where we took community members. We invited the whole community to come and visit the school. And I remember working on that. And we actually had guides, and we did tours of the school and spoke to the school. And it was really innovative in terms of being a lead school. So we talked about all the great things that were in the school. So I guess whenever we're in that fortunate position to build a new school, that's exactly what we would do again.
So I kind of view it, so we change the name, we change the logo. It's kind of like we finish a book, we're putting it on a shelf, and it's a new book. Or to me, it might be an old building, right?
Mm-hmm.
It may have been there for a long time, but we're giving it new life. We're making it something different. I think it would be kind of cool that we get this process done, and then we use our media partners and our fabulous communications team, and we host a big old party over there for anybody who wants to come, because it's a new school.
Oh, I think they love that idea. Yes, absolutely.
Principal Harper's not.
That's
Well,
a
that's
wonderful,
all my questions.
wonderful idea.
Well, we did it for
North Star.
Turning Point. We had
Yes, we did it for
big,
North. Yes.
party when we changed that. So
Yeah.
Maybe we can do it after the break that we have in the summer before they start the next.
Yeah,
by then hopefully everything could be lined
That's
up.
right. And timing is everything.
Yeah.
You look at the timing to make sure there's nothing else on the calendar so that we get the most, that we get the maximum amount of coverage for the school. So yes, we will absolutely do that.
Great idea.
Okay.
Signs on the buses?
Stop it.
I'm not commenting on that. That's for another board meeting.
Is there anyone that wants to offer public comment on this? Seeing none, we'll turn it back to the board for motion.
I move that the Board of Trustees approves the recommendation to rename Washoe Innovations High School to Innovations High School and update the logo to reflect the school's image, and I'm honored to make that motion.
Second.
Everybody seconds that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So carried unanimously.
Yay, so go Innovations.
Thank you so much, trustees.
Awesome.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, you should have told me you were here, and I would have moved you up even further. I hate to have students miss school, especially those scholars for the.
Should we see if Mr. Mack will be willing to donate some? Oh, I'll ask you later. I'll ask.
Okay, then we'll go back to item 6.01, public hearing on the discussion and approval of the resolution
Did you hear that?
authorizing medium-term obligation bonds for the purpose of acquiring school buses for the district, directing the controller to forward materials to the Department of Taxation of the state of Nevada and providing the effective date for the resolution for possible action. Hi.
Hi, Gail Carson for the record. Good afternoon, President Mayor, Interim Superintendent Davis, and members of the board. As you just noted, we are here asking for your approval of a resolution authorizing medium-term obligations so we can purchase those buses, not the same ones for the advertising, though. These are different. This is a program we've had in effect at the school district since 1993. It provides for a consistent funding source and a systematic replacement of our school buses. The program is set up on a 5-year rolling basis, meaning that each year one obligation is fully paid and retired, and a new one takes its place. So there's no significant increase at all in our budget appropriations. This year, our purchases, we're expecting 23 buses at a cost of approximately $2.9 million. We intend to pay for that with about $600,000 that's already in the budget, and this $2.3 million medium-term obligation that we're requesting. That's the short of it. So
that's good.
Questions?
Yes, Mr. Smith.
I actually had a chance to tour some bus yards with Veronica, and so my question is, because I was fascinated at the potential cost savings, how many of these buses will be of the propane version?
We have a $110,000 grant this year that goes with this purchase, and I think we were going to upgrade 6 of them. 6, thank you.
17.
17 out of 23?
Correct.
Could you come up and identify yourself?
Rick Martin, Director of Transportation for the record, and it's a pleasure to be here today. 17 buses of that, which are going to be general ed buses, 77 passenger, and those will be propane. We have one bus that's coming in as a regular gas bus that will be worked as a special needs bus and also a wind bus in the Washoe Valley area because of its height. Lower restrictions so that we can actually get those students home and not call parents and or transport them in our cars. And then 4 trip buses that will be diesel, but those are for the longer distance trips. And not every area, some of the smaller communities have the infrastructure in place for propane. Eventually they will, but they don't right now. And 2 special needs buses. Actually, 15 gen ed, 2 special needs will all be propane. So
I thought it was all I had.
President Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I did not ask you to please open this as a public hearing with the opportunity for public comment.
The Board of Trustees will open a public hearing on the resolution authorizing medium-term obligation for the purpose of acquiring school buses for the district. And I'll call for public comment, and then we'll close the public hearing. Any public comment? Then I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
I have one more quick question.
Sure.
I know we talked about a propane station. It's relevant to the buses because I know we were talking about getting some propane buses in the North Valleys.
Correct.
Is that still scheduled to undergo this June, July?
Yep, it is still in the process, and we've just received our plans from the architects and the like for the pads and everything we need, plus the lighting, electrical. So that's sitting with capital projects right now, and then we're in the process of working through that final project. So hopefully we're shooting for July. It looks like once everything gets rolling, it should be July, but I don't have a final determination on that yet.
And just a comment.
Yes.
Anybody gets a chance to go check out some of these buses and what these drivers do every day? Veronica kind of got to play around and go through a vehicle inspection. These buses are tremendous what they can do. All the evaluation systems, all the sensors to keep these kids safe, and these new ones I'm sure are going to be more and more better. That's not proper English, come on. But they're going to be greatly improved over what it is. But yeah, get a chance to go out and see it. I think it's great to get the new buses.
We've been out, and I've actually driven the bus.
Oh,
You driven the bus?
Yes.
I haven't driven a bus yet, Rick.
Trustee Ruggiero, we need to talk about your certification in that area. And Trustee Smith will be glad to get you through training.
Thank you.
With no children.
Right.
Okay. I just been informed that I have to open up the hearing again and then ask for public comments. So we'll open up the public hearing on this item on the buses. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
It was on more than just buses.
Oh, yeah, it was on the directing the comptroller to forward materials, so.
If there's any public comment or anybody wants to speak on those issues.
Anybody want to?
Why don't we read the full agenda?
Again.
Yes.
Okay, again. Public hearing, discussion, and approval of a resolution authorizing medium-term obligation for the purpose of acquiring school buses for the district, directing the comptroller to forward materials to the Department of Taxation of the state of Nevada and providing the effective date of the resolution. Okay, now open the public hearing. Okay, it's open there. Anybody have any public comment? Come on, somebody come up and say something. Okay, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
We're not closing. We're closing public comment.
Yeah, the hearing is all open.
Yeah.
Vote whenever it's appropriate, but the hearing is always open.
Okay.
Okay, any motion?
I move approval.
Been moved, any second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. So carried unanimously.
Thank you.
You guys in business, you always foul things up. Okay. Then we'll be going to 6.3, update on the 2015 graduation initiative for presentation and discussion only. Okay. Dr. Lamarca and Ben Hayes.
President, Mayor, Interim Superintendent Davis, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity. For the record, Paul Lamarca, Chief School Performance Officer, and
for the record, Ben Hayes, Chief Accountability Officer.
Thank you for this opportunity. We want to take you through an update on where we stand in our sort of march towards graduation. If you, I think you have the presentation before you, but what you have on the screen right now is a pie chart that kind of represents where our 12th graders were at the beginning of the school year. You have several categories. You have students who are on track for graduation, students who had all their credits but required passing a single high school proficiency test, or all they need to do is pass a test or more than one test in order to graduate. Those who are slightly credit deficient also needed to pass a high school test. Those that were slightly credit deficient, students who are severely credit deficient, and students who are severely credit deficient and needed to pass tests. We now have, where we stand after March, a couple of opportunities to take the high school proficiency tests, a semester in which there was opportunities to accrue credits, and you have the same basic categories of students. And Ben's going to take you through, I think, on a category by category basis where some of the changes are. You will notice that with kids who are slightly credit deficient, we see an increase there, but that's because we have a decrease in kids who are severely credit deficient. I think the big news here, or the good news here, is if you just look at who's on track now versus who is on track in September, and we are doing very well given where we're at in the year. We still have a lot of work to do before the end of the year, but we're pretty optimistic. I'll turn over to Ben now.
Thank you, Paul. So I will just go through, and you're pretty familiar with this chart. Trying to look at, like Interim Superintendent Davis said earlier, every kid. This represents the 4294 that we've had enrolled, and each one of them has a story. So I won't go through and tell you the whole story behind all 4,000 of them, but I'll go through some categories, and Paul will talk a little bit about some stories, because these are, they're not data points, they're not little stick figures, they're real cool adolescents out there that we're proud of, but they make different decisions sometimes. So in September, we were about 4,300, 4,294. Of those, 2,553 were on track, and that's more than we've had in the past, slightly more. We're getting better systems kind of all the way 9th through, well, hopefully K through 12, pre-K through 12, but certainly our high school systems and catching kids before they go too far off track are getting a little bit better. We're still doing some work out there, and there's tremendous work going on in the schools with freshman academies and sophomore stuff. But so we start off the year a little bit better, which is great. And then you can see the March data, and we've gotten up to 2,900 on track, which is really the best we've been. And since Paul and I have been tracking this for 5 years now, since we kind of started in the district with the cohort rate. But there's pictures of kids, man.
I know.
Okay. I apologize. You all make me nervous. Okay, for the record, Ben Hayes, I'm going to go slow. No, so this is just, and Paul and I kind of have debated this again for years, that we're afraid to come out with projections. We don't want to read too much into these numbers because they are humans. But this is where, so in September, we had, like Paul showed on the pie charts, about 2,500 on track. Now we've made some progress from 2,500 to 2,900. So that means almost an extra 400 kids kind of are ready to cross that stage. Now, again, Paul will talk a little bit about this later. Last year we lost some kids that were totally on track, and then their spring senior year, they kind of lost track. So we kind of did a lot of work with them in the summer and got most of them back, but these numbers will fluctuate. And so the point behind these two slides, and I'll go in deeper into categories, is that the green is getting bigger. And that's what we want to see. When I come up here in June for an update, and we have until August to get these kids across the stage, we want to see this kind of virtually all green. So we'll start with the kids that were the original 2,553 that were on track. Still, virtually all of them are on track, but interestingly enough, we have lost those 4 that are purple. Those are slightly credit deficient, and we're pretty good about the kids are pretty good about, and the principals and the teachers, getting them kind of caught up with those slight credits. The worrisome one is the dropout and vanished. And again, it's they're adolescents and they make different decisions. Life happens. I think some of these, though, will find that actually transferred out. So we're not allowed to count them as transferred out to another district or another state until we actually get the written verification and transcripts. So I suspect some of these will go into the transferred out category. So this is good news. We're always worried about some of them we have documented dropout. Incredible re-engagement. People are doing wraparound with them, trying to get them back, and having them stay here. It's happened too. I have been looking more into gifted and talented data recently, and we've had in the past gifted and talented kids that were just sick of school because they were probably bored and advanced, and they didn't want to stick around to get the early graduation, so they said GED, then I'm going to college. So that might be the case in some of these. We have to look a little bit further, but this is really good news that we've kept them all, and we're doing all that we can to get them all to graduate. So the high school graduation initiative, and this isn't to imply, I'm just going to take you through these 1,000 kids that we kind of target through door to door and Boys and Girls Club nights and the graduation initiative that our schools work so hard on. This isn't to imply that we don't work really hard with all the kids outside of that circle. So even kids that are severely credit deficient and have dropped out, we're working on re-engaging them. We're working on getting them kind of stay with us for 5 years to get all the credits made up and tutoring them for high school proficiency. So, but I'm going to take you through these kind of 1,000 that we target that we believe we should get across the stage each year. So these, I'll start with 700 that all they needed was one or more high school proficiency exam. And as you can see, we've gotten 251 of them on track to graduate. So they've passed all their high school proficiency exams, and that's really good news. It's a little bit better than we've done in the past again, and we need to keep doing better than we've done in the past in order to keep our graduation rate up. I should stop here and explain, and Dr. Lamarca alluded to it earlier, that they've had a couple chances to take the test. They took it again in March, and we've not gotten those data back yet. We're getting them back this week so we can have kind of another update. But we usually get a good jump out of that. And then again in May, these kids will have another chance to test, and then one more last-ditch effort in July. And so we'll kind of getting around these 446 that still need one HSPE. Those are the kids that have been working kind of in the extended day opportunities in the intercessions and things like that, working on kind of tutoring. I know my wife was tutoring a couple kids and I found out they passed. So this will kind of go up over the next few months. More of those blues will turn green, in other words. And like I said, we'll get momentarily, we'll get those data back. I know the writing test came back. And it's kind of strange. I wish I could give you the data now, but it comes first to us in like PDF form. So we had to have to hand count, and I don't want to go on public record and give you bad information. So we will get you an update soon then when we have those data. So the kids that were high school proficients and slight credits, and these are kind of a little bit more intense. You can see that we've made a lot of progress with them. Like I said, we've gotten pretty good with the seven period day. We and the schools and the counselors and the principals and teachers have gotten really good, and the kids, of course, mostly at making up credits when they need them. So we've seen kids earn 10 credits in a year, earn 12 credits in a year once. So they're really good about doing that. So these kids, now that they've got that out of the way, they're getting high school proficiency help. And again, we hope for a bump in that when we get these March results back pretty quickly. And then for the kids that were just slightly credit deficient, we've gotten about 2/3 of those back to be on track. So that's really good news. And we're pretty confident. We're actually, with the kids that are slightly credit deficient, we're pretty good. We're a little bit over 90% or more with them. We'd like to be even closer to 100%, but we're pretty good about wrapping around these. And then you should see when Tracy, or Superintendent Davis, doesn't exaggerate when she says leadership team, and then all the principals were on text messages and going through every one of their individual pages and saying, what does this kid need? And we can text it's amazing. You can text any principal out there and they'll say within 5 seconds, oh, yeah, she's doing this class after school and she's kind of making progress in these areas. So
I have a quick question. Is the transferred out number incorrect in relation to the graphic there? It should be 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. My goal of no mistakes. Okay. Yeah, you're right. So I'll hand it back over to Paul and talk about kind of a story of success that we've had, and also a story that's unfinished that'll inspire you to do the work that we do.
Well, I don't know about
it's
inspire
not my
you.
story.
Huh?
Is it my today's story? Are you telling the story? Okay.
No. Well, you could tell the story. Would you like to tell the story?
No, you go.
Okay. Well, we are focused on kids and all their stories, and there's a story behind every child, and there's a face and a name behind every one of these little stick figures that we have up here. So I want to talk about one boy who started the year slightly credit deficient and also needing to pass high school proficiency tests. When he was a freshman, he was attending one of our comprehensive high schools, and he was arrested for selling marijuana. He was then homeschooled his entire sophomore year. He entered Washoe Innovation severely credit deficient. And this was prior to Innovations becoming a big picture school, but they were on the march to help kids get those credits back. He also was a young man who had a very difficult time resolving conflict, often resulted in violence against adults as well as other students. This year, this young man has done tremendously well. He's made up all of his credits. He will graduate on time. He's passed all his high school tests. He did incredibly well on the ASVAB and was considering going into the Army, but now he feels that he will be able to earn some scholarships, and he anticipates attending a private college in a different state beginning in spring of next year. Is a great kid, has had no major discipline or minor discipline incidents this year. So when we stick with these kids and we support these kids, these are the kinds of things that can happen. By contrast, we had a young man who began the year on track. And actually, as far as our slides go, you would still find him as green and on track. He began the second semester with 21.5 credits, only needing a credit and a half, or 20.5 credits, only needing a credit and a half to graduate, had passed all his high school proficiency tests, had a change in school prompted by a change in location, but hit a bad time in his life. And based on what his parents have shared, there's a suspected drug use, perhaps a psychological disorder, and we do not anticipate that this young man will walk the stage this year. We work with him. He's working with our re-engagement center on an almost daily basis. They're encouraging him to get in just to get those credits through A+, if nothing else. We will never not support this young man. He will graduate at some point, but likely he won't cross our stage this year, and he'll go down as a non-graduate. But if we can get him next year, or if it takes 2 years or 3 years, we'll work with that young man. So again, it's just important to remember that there's a child behind every one of these figures that we're sharing with you today. Did you have another story you wanted?
Well, I just want to add a couple things. This year we really expanded grad nights, and the departments collaborated with equity and diversity, family partnership, counselors. We were at Worcester, Lemon Valley, I forget the Sun Valley. We were at several places, and I kind of went over what the parents said. Overwhelmingly, parents were really excited that they didn't really understand what it takes for their kids to graduate, credits, high school proficiency. And what we see is, and we did surveys, so we have survey data, is that they have a better understanding of what it takes for their students to be on track. But moreover, it's a friendly environment where it's one-to-one, where people can talk about their kids and feel that it's safe and get good direction, not only on where their kid is, but what we can do as a district to assist them. So kudos for the entire team for that work, because we really do pull out names. What does this kid need? A tutor, intervention, intercession, like name and face. Secondly, I just want to say my story of today's text message, because we really try to encourage each other about the work that we do. And I received a text that we had a student who was 100% dropped out of high school, and a re-engagement kid who passed all her proficiencies. All right. So it's nice that we also do the work, but we also get notifications, because I think it validates the work that everybody's doing as a team to make sure we get these kids to the finish line. And I just think it's a blessing to be able to do this work with this team. Thanks, guys.
Yes.
On the not enrolled, dropout, or vanished, all of these numbers are from the beginning of this school year. Is that correct? Or when?
The numbers on the graphs that we showed are basically the kids that we've had the whole time. So there's also a different data set that I could show you, that because kids came to us in November with no credits, or not enough credits, or with enough credits to be graduating. So we've looked at those data, and it tells just about the same story. Typically, the kids that come to us late, even if it's junior year, they don't do as well as the kids that we have for the most time. That makes sense for several reasons. But the success that we're having with them seems to be just about on par with what we've had before, which is to say a little bit ahead. So no, you didn't see we have, I can't say what the final cohort will be. I think it's going to be, those numbers were 4291, I believe. The final cohort will end up being about 4,400.
Well, the issue for me in relationship to those students, which I think you probably have given a relatively not wholly complete definition of those students, but if we're looking at students who are coming into Washoe County School District not having been here all their lives, looking at the kind of supports perhaps we need to put in place for them in a different manner than what we are currently doing. And I don't know what you're thinking of or how you're doing that, but I'm particularly concerned about those kids who end up here with little or no credits or whatever, and then just are so disheartened and I know all the family situations. I understand a lot of that, and I understand personal student situations. But I'm just wondering if we can't, when we identify those students who are latecomers to the district and we know what they need or what they don't have, more likely, what kind of motivation, what kind of support do you think we need to put in place so that we can really drill down and work with those students more effectively rather than having them vanish or drop out? And this would then speak to the larger community in relationship to how we support those students as they come in, knowing that many of them have families that are not intact.
Yeah, I'll talk for 10 seconds and then hand it over to Dr. Lamarca. We've gotten better about identifying the kids. So when a kid comes, we'll get all of their data real quickly and get them into Big. And Big is the data warehouse is live all the time. So a counselor or a principal can go in and get that kid's data right away, even though much of it's missing. But you can see the notes and stuff like that. But Dr. Lamarca has been working through for years on this.
Well, maybe not enough, though. I think you're actually pointing out a very important issue that we need to deal with Byron, and prior to Byron, we've been working for years on transitions, but typically those have been transitions within districts. So, for example, a student who may become adjudicated and then they do some time and then they come back. We work on a transition plan, or for discipline, they end up with some time at Inspire and then they come back. And we do work, or we're trying to work increasingly more efficiently between schools with counseling teams to identify the kinds of structures that the student was successful within, so that as they transition back into that large comprehensive high school, they have a better chance at success. I think we can apply some of that same thinking to kids who are new to the school district. As Ben mentioned, we do have more data more quickly, and so some of that can occur. There is a AB 233, which was passed, I think, a couple of sessions ago, that does allow students to test out in certain circumstances, is a measure, a statewide measure, that can address a little bit of what you're getting at. But I do think you're talking about a group that may be within our system a little bit more vulnerable, and thank you for bringing up that point. Something we can look at.
Yeah, because I know that we've done so much. I understand the effort that's gone forward in relationship to this, but in just looking at some of the more critical data, just related specifically to those students in those lines, right. We're looking at community support, the pastors, the churches, wherever we can find it, and perhaps that is something that we really need to look at, and whether or not there's got to be funding somewhere for a disaffected youth. I always call them push out, not necessarily drop out, but that's the difference that we have here in this district at this time, is that there's a legitimate concern of holding people accountable to make certain that all children are being taken care of. Right. Those children that are exceptional and exceptionally hard to reach, we still need more supports, I believe, in that area, and perhaps whatever you would come up with or however you would target in on those students, that we call together some sort of forum in relationship to this entire problem, because it's a community problem. Those children who do not graduate from high school and who end up in a road that is not healthy for anyone, including the community, certainly let alone them, we need to try and continue to work to bring them back in.
Yeah, you're right. And I think each time we go through this, we learn a lot from, and not that it all comes down to data. It is obviously systems, but what you do with the data. But we can identify who isn't as successful. So I don't know if you remember at the Data Summit, we show, and we're happy about this, the children in transition are kids that have been kind of without permanent housing at some point, typically graduated about 30%. But if we're able to keep them for the whole time, then it shoots up to 60%, which is still too low. But we know those kind of wraparound services work. The other thing that I point out, and Dr. Lamarca is with me on this, the way we support kids on the high school pathway is going to have to change in the next few years because of end of course exams coming in 9th and 10th grade. So we're already working a lot on that with the whole academic team.
Yeah, those students who vanish that have been here for a long period of time, therein lies something that I think we really need to take a look at. What schools were they in?
Mhm.
What services did they have? How did we lose track of that? And perhaps therein is a stopgap. We really now need to call on such and such an organization to come in and to help us to pinpoint those kids and to keep them accountable and to help the families, because many times those older children, they're pretty much independent and they're still kids.
You know, you guys show a lot of love and concern and caring for these kids, and you make them feel wanted. You make them feel appreciated. And if you can spread that around to all of them, we'll do all right. I know I was just looking at your chart there. American Indians up 8 percentage points. And it's all the way across the board. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so this slide shows, and this is something I beat myself up to. I hate to do projections like this just because these numbers will change. But I've never seen it, and Paul will attest to it. In our kind of 4 or 5 years of doing this, we've never seen every single group up like this. GT isn't the exception. They're down 1%, but 95, and we'll go after them as well. It speaks to, though, the relationships in the building that's going on, and kind of identifying who needs some help and going out and giving help. That one of the first things Tracy did as a deputy was we came up with this sheet and it said, Tiffany, go out and talk to the pastors. Then make a sheet of this. We're going to get this group involved and this group involved. And that really, a lot of, I think, what has helped us over the last few years is parents knowing exactly what their kids need. That with the adjusted diploma and things like the certificate of attendance, I was surprised to see how much misperception there was around there. So it's neat to see this, and I think it's because we have stronger systems. Now, that being said, I'm going to make fun of myself for a minute because this is and I don't like showing projections, and my dumb quote in the newspaper a few weeks ago said that, I really hope we make it. That was only to say, I really do hope we make this. I'm worried about projections. I know that hope is not a strategy. And I know that there's incredible work going on out there with our kids and our parents and our teachers and principals. So I will never say hope again. But then yesterday, I was on this national panel for measuring social and emotional skill competencies, and hope is one of them. So then I forgave myself a little bit.
Hope is good.
That's right.
Just a quick question about that table. Forgive me for once again asking this kind of a question, but the title says WCSD in the state of Nevada. I just want to clarify. This is 14 versus 15, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I blew it twice.
Look at free and reduced lunches going up 15%. I mean,
yeah,
that's amazing.
It really is. It's one that we've dug into the data. Paul and I noticed this. Well, Paul actually noticed it first a few months ago, and we dug into it and thought maybe they're identifying them differently in Infinite Campus, but as far as we can tell, it's the truth. We're still going to investigate as much as we can, but it looks like we're up.
I'm shocked, but then when you tell me all the hard work that you're doing and the stories of the kids you're helping, I can see why.
Right.
Showing concern about them, but 15 percentage points on free and reduced lunches, that's terrific.
So along with hope, everyone on the count of 3 knock 3 times. And you got the wood, so you got to knock on the wood.
I'll do that.
1, 2, 3.
That's right.
So Interim Superintendent Davis alluded to the door-to-door campaign. That's a big part of this march, this effort that we use every year. And we go visit families and students in the fall. But she talked about these nights where we've been visiting with families, and that's kind of the next iteration of the door-to-door campaign. There for several years, we only had the fall event, but starting last year with her leadership, we started meeting with families. We did that at the end of last year, but special education met with families in January. Mike Doring and the options team met with families just before spring break. Actually, the night that we were originally going to give you this presentation, he was at Worcester for one of those nights. And we'll be meeting with families again in May. That's an ongoing effort. And it's really to, as Ben said, to inform parents about what their children may need. And sometimes it's easier for them to talk with us away from a school than out of school. Great collaboration with accountability. I know there were some questions based on the presentation regarding how we monitor. Ben and his team are incredible at providing us with data all the time, no matter what we need, how we want it. We work with our principals on a kind of cycle. The principals, it's important to know, through BIG, they've got access to this data any day, any minute of any day. But we do kind of regularly, especially as the information is updated. We work with the principals to make sure, and I'm amazed. Several years back when we started doing this, it was really kind of new to think about each kid individually. But every time we go out now, I talk with the area superintendents, we got to make sure we got a plan for every kid. They come back with these spreadsheets, and every child, there's a column on comments, and I've got a full sort of listing of what's happening with that particular child. It's really incredible the way the schools are embracing this effort. Ongoing mentoring efforts, we've got a lot of mentoring going on. We need more of that. We've got a lot of... From my perspective, we have a lot of young men who need strong mentors out there. I'm sure we have a lot of young women who need strong mentors out there. I just happen to have a couple of those young men in my house, and I need a couple of mentors if anyone wants to help. Intercession, summer school programming, before school, after school tutoring, Saturday academies, all part of kind of the toolkit that's being used to help these children. So I think that's it. We can take questions if you have questions.
I have a few questions. So
Just a second.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr.
I gotta break that habit.
It's a bad habit.
Yeah, go ahead and ask.
It's because I'm sitting here and I'm usually first for board reports, so I'm in the habit. I do want to dovetail on what Dr. McGlory said about we have to have that conversation. And I think that conversation starts with our community partners, our juvenile justice system, foster care system. But I think it's a conversation worth bringing to the board level or community level where it has some board support to have some forums or some discussions about what can we do as a community. Because I really think it is a community effort in this sense. So I'm interested in that, Superintendent Davis. And I want to talk about the importance of mentoring and why it is so important, because it's research-based, and Ben will like this comment because we know it works. We've seen the data nationally about the importance that having a positive adult role model can make in the academic success of a young person. And so I think we do need to beef up our mentoring programs. And I'm hoping that I was able to connect Dr. Green with a possible source for funding to increase some of our mentoring. So I'm hoping that will come to fruition also. So I really do believe in that. And so I'm wondering also if we need to have some sort of discussion about will we have to change our efforts based off of end-of-year exams? Will we have to change our strategies? And we'll be doing multiple strategies because we're still focusing on proficiency exams, but we're also now taking on end-of-year exams. So how does that look? And do we need to have some discussion about changes or things like that? Have you had that? I'm sure you've already had that discussion.
We've had that discussion, and we'll continue to have that discussion. There's so little is known about the end of course examinations that we're a little gun shy. We hear that they're far more rigorous, and they come at a scary time. If you signal to a child at the end of their freshman year that they failed a test that they need to pass in order to graduate, what's that going to do, especially when they haven't met with a lot of success prior to that? We met with all of our principals at the last ANS meeting, vertically and leveled, to talk about some of the changing requirements at that high school level, but really talking about core instructional practice. This is as much of a problem for our elementary schools as it is for our high schools. In terms of a general strategy within the context of graduation initiative, I don't know how much we have to shift. And the reason why I say that is our high schools were the first to be pushing on us hard for the last several years about the ability to use the funding we provide not only for 12th grade students, but for freshmen and for sophomores. And so we have, I think, A+, which is one of our online programs for that enables students to get online and accrue credits. That is most successful in the freshman and sophomore year. when a child is just a half a credit shy, and then they can get back on track and meet with some success. When they get too deep in, those kinds of efforts are difficult because, quite frankly, they require a ton of self-discipline. So I don't know that our overall kind of intervention strategies have to change. Our core instructional practice has to change, especially in the area of mathematics. And we're going to work. Curriculum and instruction is sort of leading an effort right now to talk about an instructional vision around mathematics. We will have ongoing conversations with our principals. We see some short-term things that we need to change now, but we have some longer-term changes that need to be made as well.
You wanted to ask?
Please.
Go ahead.
Trustee Ruggiero, yes, mentoring works because when my kid gets out of line, they tell her that I'm coming and she gets to school. Because I do make home visits too. But I think we have moved from a place where we were reactive, right, about getting kids to where we are now proactive and encouraging kids. So we're not waiting until a freshman is a senior and saying, oh, by the way, you're missing 6 credits, right? Parents need to know their freshman year so they have opportunities to catch up and they're not trying to do 15 extra classes and pass all the high school proficiency tests. I think we're building a system about being proactive and engaging parents in the process so that they know we are better than we were, but we know we still have room to grow, to be our best, to get to the mission that we have for every kid. So we know that there's things that we have to tackle, as Dr. McClory and you talked about. Dr. Green has actually been working on a project looking at some organizations to actually help us with that piece and what that looks like. There's some good models across the country where they are capturing some of those students and what that would look like and how much that would cost and how do we engage the community and pieces like that. So that's not a far off thought. That is a process that we've actually been approached by and thought about how do we reach that next set of students that we are missing.
Can I add one? Oh, sorry. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. I want to add on to that in that traditionally, and speaking of being reactive, we came up with this early warning system to help us to be a little bit more proactive when we have for every kid. But through the great work and leadership of Leah Kusher at Worcester, we're kind of building a new index that doesn't say, so the early warning system or the risk index you might have heard it called, identify a kid that might be at risk of dropping out. And unfortunately, it's pretty predictive unless we get some interventions in place. And it's been a great tool. But with her staff, she and with the incredible IT staff and with our department, but her leadership, we've made kind of a more, it's not just a kids at risk of dropping out. It's color coded over 6 different categories like Tier 1, Ivy League, and then regular college, and all on track to graduate, but might need intervention and that kind of stuff. So there's really, and it really has worked with her kids to say, yeah, I don't care if I'm on track. I want to be in that purple category. I want to be on my way to Yale next year. So it's really a neat thing, and we're going to try to roll that out to all of our schools next year. And then I will say I was looking recently. We work with the Ed Alliance on the data profile, and last year we had more graduates than ever, but also more kids that went into the NG system than ever and went out of state for college than ever. And that's a celebration when they cross our stage and go on to that. Or and a lot more military kids this year, and then the post-secondary. It's neat for me to see after several years of the conversations around it, our community colleges and technical colleges being more responsive to kind of the educational needs of our state.
And if you haven't been to Worcester to see that system, you really should go see that. And the foundation is working with us to outfit other high schools and community support. So if you haven't had a chance to go look at that, please do. And
Great.
Dr. Green is here. We were having a discussion, Dr. McClory and Trustee Ruggiero, about looking at some organizations to help us capture some of those vanished kids. And I know you and I had talked about it, and you've been doing a little research. I know we're not all the way there yet, but maybe you could give them like a brief description of some of the things we talked about. And thank the Lord for text messages.
Yeah, we've actually been looking at 2 different companies. We actually have a meeting set up, scheduled with you, with the former superintendent, Dr. Hager, I believe. We've also had one through Graduation Alliance, which has been some great information. Essentially, what the companies offer is they come in and the district provides a list of students who are vanished and lost, but still on our cohort grad rate. What they do is they attempt to find those students. If they find them, they're then responsible for providing the wraparound support and the education for those students. For what they receive would be somewhat similar to the DSA funding we would receive. Depending on the company, the amount changes. So they say it's a benefit for the district. It's a win-win because these are students we're not getting DSA funding for. They're lost. They find them. They try to engage them to graduate, and it doesn't really cost the district anything because we were not getting that DSA funding originally. But that DSA funding would then go to that organization.
So we just scratched the surface of this probably in the last 8 weeks, like looking into this, but we actually have been.
Good. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful discussion, and you've done a lot to improve scholars' attitude. They now are confident in themselves that they can do it, and that's attitude, and that's not measured on any test. And I could tell that you're doing that by just talking to some of these kids. It's great. Okay, moving right along to 604. Oh, I'm sorry. 604, okay. When we get to public comment. Okay. Consideration and discussion regarding number 1, the process for selecting a permanent superintendent for the district, including but not limited to discussion of whether or how to possibly conduct a search for appropriate candidates, solicitation of community input from the public regarding selection of a superintendent, and discussion regarding the professional and personal attributes and characteristics that are desirable for a superintendent, and 2, the possible appointment pursuant to NRS 391.110 of current interim superintendent Tracy Davis as permanent superintendent, subject to negotiations and approval of an appropriate written employment contract for discussion and possible action. And we'll just put this up for discussion. Let's try to get a motion first for discussion.
I'd like to make a motion for consideration. Yes. Is this the appropriate time?
Yes.
I would hear public comment.
Pardon?
Should we hear
No, we get after the motion because, we take that.
I can wait. Just come back to me. That's
Okay.
fine.
Public comment.
Yeah, I'm okay. Just come back to me.
Edward Bento. Practice makes perfect, huh?
Yeah, well, I practiced all weekend.
All right.
For the record, my name's Edward Bento. A lot of you know me. Let's just kind of want to forget about credentials and all that kind of stuff. And I just want to start off with this. And I had stuff prepared. I'm just going to ignore it. If you care that much, then you take them. And I was 13 years old when I heard that. That was my mom saying that. My teacher raised me. It's who I call my dad now. About 2 months ago, I think, I had the opportunity to meet with Superintendent Davis, and I could tell that she cared. And so I just want you to remember, I hold the credentials of a 13-year-old that probably wouldn't have amounted to anything if it wasn't for his teacher. I remember my superintendent, Mr. Green. I lived in his home for a while. Getting a little emotional, but there's something I just want you to remember. We're not going to be funny today. You get a lot of pressure from the community. There's outside forces, special interests that want you to go a certain way because they want to be relevant. They want to stay relevant, right? I've spent 15 years in politics. I've spent another over 20 in marketing and brand management, right? One of the highlights of my life was leading Marines in battle. I can't tell you the pressure that you get from families, from loved ones, about the decisions that you make about their safety and their training. and why they're away from their families. I never gave in to that pressure. But you know what? When we deployed, every time we deployed, and it was a combat unit, every one of my guys came back alive because I did what I thought was right. I didn't succumb to the pressures of outside people. You know, I went with what I know was absolutely right to do. Now, going back, when I sat with Tracy, I could tell that she was doing this for the right reasons and that she stayed here because of those reasons and because of those kids. She loves those kids. There's an incredible love affair going on between the superintendent and those children. And I could tell because I've been there. I've sat on the other side. So I went to my house, started walking to the front door to go get my clothes. And my teacher said, "Don't worry, Eddie, just get in the car. We'll buy new stuff." And that's my dad today, who's still an educator this day. So forget that I have an MBA. Forget I've been the commissioner of minority affairs for the state of Nevada. Forget I own my own business. Forget all that. This comes from a kid that nobody knows this. Very few of you do. That kind of has been there. There were days that the only time I got a chance to eat was in the school cafeteria. So I'm going to close and I'm going to leave you with this. So my high school principal, I'd have lunch with him every once in a while because he wanted to make sure how I was doing. He left me with these 3 things. He goes, "Eddie, you can do anything you want so long as you follow the 3 Ds. Drive, desire, and determination." And I think this lady has them. And I think her heart's in the right place. I know it is. So thank you. Apologize for going over time. I hope you make the right decision today and you stay with your vote that you made a few weeks ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks and thank you for your service to the country. Is there any other public comment? Anybody else want to make comment that didn't fill out a card? Okay, seeing none, we'll move right along then. Did you want to make a motion? You had to ask to. Yeah, nobody else was making a move, so.
Okay, first of all, I do want to say, Edward, thank you for that. I think it is incumbent upon us as a board to do what we think is the right thing to do. Certainly, Interim Superintendent Davis, thank you for your comments earlier. In that, I'd like to make this motion. I move that we, the first step that we take in hiring a permanent superintendent is that we develop a process to get community input.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we develop a process to gain public input.
Yeah, community input on the characteristics.
On the characteristics of what the public would like to see in a superintendent. Did I have your motion
yes,
correct?
I didn't say the characteristics, but I think that's important.
Okay.
I don't want to go out and have a referendum on.
Okay. Any more discussions? None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal.
No.
Okay, it's, pardon me?
No.
We had 5 yeses and 2 nos. Motion carries. For the record, show this count.
We need to
Okay.
discuss a process or.
Well, we should discuss something of the process and then, you're talking about characteristics. And what characteristics does a community want?
Excuse me,
yes, sure.
Mayor. We have the characteristics that we want and we need. She's sitting right there. I don't understand why we need to go out and look for someone to do something that we already have 2 ladies, not 1, but 2 ladies doing and doing well. I have no problem with community input. But I do like to know that when we've got someone doing the job, that we reward that by giving her what it is that she is entitled to, the job. This business of a glass ceiling and everybody putting in what they think we want is to me a complete and total waste of time. Now, I've been in the education business for 54 years. I've hired presidents, I've hired chancellors, I've fired presidents, and I've fired chancellors. We've got one of the best things that we could ever hope to find, and I see absolutely no reason for going any further. And I don't know whether or not this is even remotely possible, but I'd like to make a motion. Is this remotely possible?
I don't know what your motion is.
Okay.
State your motion.
My motion is very simple. I move that we appoint Tracy Davis, permanent superintendent, the Washoe County School District.
My response, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The agenda item was for consideration of two things. One was consideration of the process, and that passed. If you pass that one, I don't see how you can at the same time turn around and make a different decision. That's whether no matter how strongly you may feel about that, and I can sympathize and understand why somebody may feel that way. But community input is what is expected, I think, from a board of trustees who are elected, and so I guess that's what the motion that was made by Trustee Taylor was about, and passed 5-0. That could very well and easily result in the ultimate appointment of Superintendent Davis as the permanent superintendent. But community input is what you voted on, and I think that's passed. I don't see how
in that case
make a difference.
I will withdraw my motion.
Let me comment though. I don't think.
Just a second, I gotta clear something. He said 5-0. It was 5-2. So I will correct that.
Did I say 5-0?
Yes, you did.
I apologize for that.
Okay.
I want to just respond to my esteemed colleague. I said my extinguished colleague. Distinguished. Sorry.
So many people would like to see that.
I don't take back anything that I've ever said about the work that I think Interim Superintendent Davis has done, and the good job I think that she's done with the district. I don't take any of those back. I don't try to. I stand by all of that, and I would say it again and again and again, because none of that has changed. But I do believe that the prudent step, and I struggled with this the last time, and I will go back to something that Edward said. I think I got to do what I think is right, and I think the right thing to do, because struggle last time is let's get some community input on the characteristics. That's my opinion, and that's what I think is right. It didn't go what happens from there, then we get to come back and decide what happens from there. But some community input on the characteristics we need is what why I made the motion.
Okay, I still say we got to look at what the process is, and that. But go ahead.
So I know that we've passed the motion. So, but I do want to say that one of the reasons that I voted the way I did. I mean, we didn't really discuss our reasonings, but I do want to say that one of our mantras right now is #WeAreWashoe County School District, and I believe that means that in some of the most fundamental decisions, I mean, even some of the decisions like what to name Innovations High School, it was stated that best practice is to go out to the community and solicit input. So I feel like that kind of best practice concept and process is what's behind my decision to go out and get community input. And that is really what we've decided. It's not to make any other decision beyond that at this point, and leaves open many other options down the road. So I want to kind of live in the spirit of We Are Washoe County School District, and remember that the we is not just the 7 of us at this table, or 8 of us at this, 9 of us at this table, or even all of us plus the staff. It's the broader community. And so to keep that we, the spirit of the we, alive, I think community input on something this significant is really important.
So I just want to go back to because I think we have forgotten that this process was discussed, and it was discussed the day that we appointed Tracy Davis to act in the interim position. We had the discussion what that would look like, and the discussion talked about we would do a contract through June. And we also talked about that we would do a check back. We would circle back in March and April and first ask Tracy Davis if she was interested in the position, if it was something she wanted to pursue. And then we would also talk about whether we felt that we would move forward if she, by appointing her, if it was someone we felt that we wanted to move forward with. And at that time, I had asked for more public input on the process of who we put into the interim superintendent position, because we were talking about that this was a step to appointing. There wasn't a desire to reach out to the public at that point. So the process was discussed, and it was discussed publicly that we would put her in this position. We would circle back if we so desired to appoint her to the position of superintendent. So I want that to be clear, that the process was discussed. Now, some of you weren't on the board at that time. You were in the audience and you were watching, but I mean, I think, I want to be clear that the process was discussed because I have been following that process. And I did circle back with Superintendent Davis 6 weeks ago or so and asked her, are you interested in serving as a superintendent? And then I circled back with Mr. Mayor and asked for this to be put on the agenda. It was not put on the agenda as I had requested, but I was following the process. So in my eyes, there was a process. So I just want that clear. Now we're going to talk about another process. That's fine, but we are now talking about another process because there was a process. Again, I want to be clear about that.
Mr. Rosenberg.
One of the things that I think it's important to notice is this has been agendized. As the last time, it was agendized. I don't see the public here giving their input. I've also would like to do one thing that I feel very necessary, and that's apologize to Ms. Davis. This cannot be an easy thing for you to sit through, and to do it with the dignity and grace that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rosenberg, but I work for kids.
That's true. I am.
Yeah. Okay. Nathaniel Dupree.
Good afternoon, Trustee Board, President Mayor, Vice President, and all the trustees. Regarding this consideration, I value process. I value community input. And but one of the things when you look at organizations and they identify what they need, when organizations are hiring a football coach, the executive team comes together and say what we need for this team. They make a decision by identifying what they need. They look at the characteristics and they make that decision. Because you can get a lot of different input from the community, and it is good to hear a community. But when it comes down to it, if the community come from all different kind of angles and say all kind of different things, the executive team is going to have to decide who we hire. And that's what we do in the NFL, NBA, colleges, all over. And so the characteristics, and I think the things that have been mentioned and the things that have been stated about interim superintendent Tracy Davis, I think it's there. I heard her echo some things today. She talked about teams. She understands she can't do this by herself. She understands that the unity and the cohesiveness that it takes to get to a place. And one thing I've learned about that, being a former athlete and a current athlete, I still am.
Denial is not a river in Egypt, Pastor.
Just want to make that clear. Teams who get to the pinnacle, sometimes they say, no one believed in us. It was just that team that made the decision. And they were the ones that said, you know what, no one believed in us that we were able to get here and we were able to accomplish what we can do. And if this team, this trustee board and the leadership team and everybody come together and work together, and if nobody else believes, in you, and you know what you have, and you know what can be accomplished with this team working together, unified. That's what I would do. That's what I would do. And so I value process. I value community, all those different things. But if you feel you have what you need and you know what you want to run this district, I say go with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your input. Okay.
I have.
Yes.
So the motion on the table is to, what is the motion on the table, or the motion that was
been
passed?
voted on.
Yeah, but what is it we have to discuss? Process. So here's the process that I'm thinking about. And I sat on the neighborhood advisory board for 7 years, and the one thing that I would hear from constituents is, you come out to us for public input, but you don't necessarily listen, or you already know what you're going to do. And I think the support is here for Superintendent Davis. And what I want to be cautious about is going out to the public with not being open and transparent about my intentions. And my intentions are, I support Tracy Davis, and I want the public to know that, and I'm happy to go out and have that discussion. And I would hope my 6 other trustees feel that she's the right person for the job also. So would it be possible to consider going out to the public for discussions and being open and honest that this is the person that we think is the right fit for the job, and having discussions and asking the community to support our intent of putting Tracy Davis in this position? Would that be something the board would consider doing?
And unless you want to,
Well, I just I understand what you're trying to say, but I just think that we put together maybe a survey on our web page, run it for 11 days, the day that it's put on there, and 10 more. Have people list the characteristics that they want to see, and we come back and look at that, and maybe we want to go out and see if anybody else is interested in the job or whatever, and then we come back and go through the process of selection.
I like the idea of a survey, because I do believe that a lot of folks who I know wanted to be here today and can't, it's difficult to come to meetings even during the evening. So I think a survey opens it up, particularly if we do it bilingually in Spanish and in English, and we get information specific to the characteristics. And then as Pastor Dupree said, we focus ourselves on coming together around what we think, based on the input, what we think the key qualifications, criteria, what we should consider as important in our superintendent going forward. And that's irrespective of an individual. That would be my perspective, is to do what you're describing would make a survey is a great idea.
I got another late asking for public comment, and I'm going to take my privilege and have Dr. Luther Mack speak to us.
I'm kind of new at these processes, so you might forgive me, but the question I asked you today is, what is the purpose of this board? And is this a decision-making board? I'm kind of getting confused, and I would like someone to respond to that.
Well, we really aren't supposed to respond to public comment. Is there anybody that would like to?
Yes.
All right.
We're a decision-making board.
Okay. That's my suggestion, is to put out a survey, start with the day that it's put on the website, and run it for 10 days. And then come back to the next meeting and see if we want to put out a search or whatever.
And I think if in doing that, it would be important to have Actually, let me say this thing first. I want to respond a little something to what Trustee Ruggiero said. The only reason I wouldn't be so supportive, because I've already said on the record what I think about where we are now is in doing something like that. Is I would be hesitant to go and have an open public referendum, so to speak, on, hey, tell us what you think about Tracy Davis. That's unfair. I think for a position for as difficult as this position has to be for her already.
Yes.
As she sits and we talk about her as though she isn't in the room. I think that opens it up, a little bit more. If it's that would be the concern I'd have about something like that.
I wasn't saying that. I was saying that we go out to the community saying, this is the person we support for the position. We ask for your support too. Here's an opportunity to have, Irene can prepare some small community dialogues, some community forums. We want you to meet this superstar who we believe in, who has done an incredible job. Let's not forget what Tracy Davis took on when she agreed to act as our interim superintendent, and the projects and the messes she has had to clean up over the past several months. Let's not forget that. She is a shining star. I'm not hearing anyone mention one thing except for Tracy Davis, and that's the kids. And this is the person I believe who is focused on our kids. And I want the community to know this is the person I support. This is the person who's been behind the rise in our graduation rates. And this is the person who continues to be behind it. And I want the community to know that this is the person I think belongs in this position. And I want them to have the opportunity to sit down and to have conversations with her, because I am 100% confident when I send Tracy Davis out into the community. And let me tell you, that's what I've been doing the past 6 weeks. I have been sending her out to our biggest critics. And you guys all know who those are, our biggest critics. And she has sat down and she has had very mindful conversations with them. And I believe that she has their support. And it is just a testimony to her skill level and her ability to do what's right for this school district. So I want to have this discussion. I think a survey is good, but I don't think just doing a survey is going to get us where we need to go. So I want to have this discussion. Is this the person you think that you want for the position? And I want the public to know how you feel. I think it's important. I'm putting myself out there. I want to hear where the rest of the trustees are.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait and see what characteristics they want, and if somebody else pops their head up, and I'll make a decision. Tracy's fantastic, and I've said that before. I think we owe it to her to know that there's characteristics. She fits characteristics. These three people, or whatever it are her competition, and she beat them out. I really believe that. And I think a simple survey, like I say, 11 days, count the first day they put it on the web, 10 days, and then we come back and discuss the selection process.
Fine. I would recommend that we get somebody from the outside to help us gather that information. So it's done in the most credible kind of way, so that there is no additional questions or whatever the case may be, that we have people here locally, and we can certainly decide who we want, or we can take recommendations, whatever you like to do, so that we can do that in a transparent way, in a credible way, and get some information that could be useful.
Yeah, I think we need to have somebody come in from not in our HR department, but have our HR department help them and conduct a survey, and then if we want to search or whatever after that, compile the people that we interview or whatever.
Do we want to do names here? Is that appropriate or
well, if
inappropriate?
You guys have
I don't know
a name,
what's appropriate.
If you have a name of somebody to lead the search, it's
what we're doing is evaluating the surveys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so someone to help gather that and
Got it.
compile the information for us and all again, because I think in doing something like this, we want to make sure the message is sent that it is like it's credible.
Right.
It's we aren't doing divvying around or anything like
Right.
that, and it's best working with our IT staff on the best way to step. I mean, a name that came to my mind, but I'm sure that there are others is Katie Simon. And I say that because I know that she has the facilitation and training skills. She also has a high level of credibility. She understands public boards. She's been in the public eye before. She understands the political pressures and all of that stuff.
Fine.
And I think it's important that we get somebody that's highly credible but yet skilled. But she is not the only one in this community that can do this stuff. I'll tell you
Well,
that.
I think we should let staff do that. I don't think we should be picking. I think we can, let's not get into the weeds. Let's let staff take care of that. So I want to be clear what we're doing here. Are we sending out a survey? What happens after the survey? I mean, I'm not clear on where we're going with this. So if this is what we're doing, I want to hear where I want the steps to be outlined now, or I want it directed to staff to come up with the steps, but I'm not going to just leave it out there and open. What steps do you see happening? A survey goes out. What do you want the survey to say? When the survey comes back, what do we do with that information? How is it shared with the community? And then what are the next steps after that?
Okay, I suggested, well, let me just go over what we've done here, what I've done. I suggested that we have a survey. I haven't made a motion on that. I was just throwing it out for discussion. If there's other suggestions, or if somebody would like to make a motion that we put out a survey of 11 days, the first day being the first day it's put on to the web.
I so move.
Yes.
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
We need a second for the motion.
My question is, I wonder if first we should kind of develop what those questions might be for any possible survey. And so maybe, I don't necessarily think we need to make a rush. We're in a good place right now. So maybe we can develop those questions and then bring them back to our next board meeting. Have staff come up with some questions, maybe some of us come up with some questions that we want to ask the community, and then launch a survey with some questions that, when we've had some time to think exactly what we want those questions to be, discuss them at our next meeting, and then decide, do we want these questions to go forward on a survey, or how do we want to do that? Or do we not like these questions?
Well, the motion said that we get community input on the characteristics. That's what the motion was.
That was your motion.
And so I don't know how many different ways we can ask for characteristics.
Exactly.
Quite honestly, unless someone wants to change the motion.
Do we want to?
Because my concern is that I don't want whatever it is that we do to get input. I don't want it to be a referendum on Tracy Davis. I think that would be
It's
unfair.
not about person.
And so I think I made it narrow on purpose.
Well, and that's okay, but I think then the question is, do we just ask one question? What characteristics would you like to see? Or do we want to list,
Well, I think,
50 characteristics and say choose the top 5 for you?
Well, I think we get some expertise on that because none of us have that, not to that extent, to be able to do that, and that's part of in hiring someone to bring them in and establishing what would be the best way to get that kind of feedback. We need some expertise.
Just to clarify, so you're suggesting that the consultant that you're suggesting that we work with develop the questions in addition to analyzing the results. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah,
okay.
compile the results for us for analysis. The only thing I'm willing to say is that in terms of next steps is getting the information when we get the inputs from the community, bringing it back here to the board, and then the board deciding from there what the appropriate next steps are, based upon the input that we get.
So we have a motion on the table.
We have a motion.
Exactly.
Is
that
that
we do
what you
this?
kind of
Yes.
wanted?
Yes.
In your motion?
Definitely.
This
Wait a minute.
Did I understand that you made the motion,
Yes.
Mr. Rosenberg, and it was seconded?
Yes.
Are you accepting an amendment to that motion to?
It was
along the lines of what Trustee
It was
said?
included in my motion.
Whatever way you want to look at it,
Okay.
but that was the question.
And you were the second. So, could you read back the motion?
Good luck. Good luck.
So the motion is that the Board of Trustees releases a survey for 11 days to seek community input on the characteristics the public is looking for in a superintendent.
Yep.
Want to amend it in any way? Anyone want to amend it in any way? Okay, seeing none.
Hire that, bring somebody in to work with
That would
that
be another,
process.
So when is it commensurate, right?
We have to get developed first.
And that's what I mean. But that's not in the motion, right?
It doesn't say when to do it.
No,
We're
it's
just
just
saying
to saying that we're going to do
We'll have
this.
to have a follow-up on it.
Follow-up motion.
Okay, all those in favor signify by
Well,
saying.
with the discussion. I have a,
Okay,
I have
go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I just want to be clear. So the motion is to develop a survey on the characteristics that we're looking for in a superintendent.
Right.
When will we have the discussion about what happens after the survey? Because I think it's important that the public knows what our entire process is, not by, that we're not, so that it doesn't look like we're, shooting from the hip. So once the survey is completed, what happens after that?
Well, the survey will be 11 days and completed. Now we vote on this,
Okay.
and then we can go on to say
Next motion.
Okay.
the next motion, what it is, okay?
Easy
Okay.
steps.
All those in favor of Howard's motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. Carried unanimously, let the record show. Okay, now we'll discuss the process. 10 days after the survey goes out, 11 days actual total. What's the process? You had suggested.
I would just suggest again. I would just suggest that with this consultant that we hire, compile all the information, put together a report for it to be presented back to the board in an open meeting, so it's available to the public and everyone can take a look at it. Very transparent and all of that. Then at that point, hopefully considering the information we're getting in terms of our input, the board decide at that point whether, because there are several other options, as I guess as Trustee Franco said or somebody said.
Right.
And then based upon that input, that at that point, then we decide what our next steps are going to be. I don't know that I know what our next steps could.
No, so actually, we appoint someone, and you had suggested a name that's excellent, and then they work with HR, compile the
and IT. They have to work with IT and communications.
And develop it. Goes on the web. I got you. It goes on the web. At that time, after actually, we could do it at our. We could do it at our next meeting.
Well, if
it'd
we
be
can,
14 days.
We can do what? Well, we have to give them a chance to get together and develop it and make sure that it's both valid and that it's reliable. So it has to be done in such a way that we.
But 14 days from now, we could come up with where we're going to go.
But I think we let them get together and do that, and I don't know that we.
Time.
Yeah, well, I mean, we only have it till June 10th.
Yeah, that's right. Or we can extend the contract.
Yes, we can do that.
I hate to do that. We don't need to.
Okay, everyone.
What I was going to do was attempt a motion. I would move that we direct staff to identify and work with an outside consultant to develop a survey that will be available for no less than 10 days, 11 including the day of release, and that staff bring that information back to us.
The consultant bring that information
The consultant
back.
will work with staff to bring that information back to us and guide us through a process of using that information to inform our decision-making step.
How about they bring the information back?
Okay, then stop there.
Because I think then it's for us as a board to decide what we want our next steps to be.
Okay, I would be comfortable.
And I would say just that it should be online, but we can also have the survey available at schools. We can put it in the newspaper. I mean, make it easy for people to get to it. So again, that's when I would lean towards communications and what mechanisms they would suggest for getting it out there.
Okay, so I was trying. I know it's okay. I just want to make sure because that was a really long motion, and JJ, I know, is trying to frantically write it. So I think as far as I got where we were before thinking about sort of the post survey and information back to staff, I'm willing to stop there. That we get. We direct staff to work with a consultant to develop and administer a survey for 11 days and bring the information back to the board.
Oh, yeah, I see your point. Okay. Irene and
I think Lisa had her hand up to the trustee Rogerio.
Second.
For the record, I'm Payne, Chief Communications and Community Engagement Officer. Just one thing I wanted to point out is that in the process that you've talked about, it seems like you're not you don't have the ability to input into the questions, which seems really key to me as trustees. I would think that you would want to really direct and input into the questions that you want to ask of the community that will guide your decision as to the next superintendent. So as it stands at the moment, you're allowing a consultant, an external consultant that you haven't chosen, working with staff to decide on the questions that we're going to ask or they're going to ask on your behalf without you having the opportunity to input into that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I mean, that might be your intention, but I wanted you to just to be sure on that.
And I think that's what you were saying, right? That's a good
All
point.
right, so we need to have a friendly amendment? Well, I can find an amendment. I don't know how friendly it'll be.
Well, I guess one of the questions I have is, are we talking then about staff working with the board to develop questions? And I want to make sure that we do that in a way that's appropriate. And in terms of suggestions from board members for questions, et cetera, because I think we've done that before, or the board in the past has done things like that, submitted questions, and then they've been compiled and brought back as the list of questions. I mean, we could do it in that step and then approve the questions at the next meeting and then go out to the survey. We could do it as a two-step process, or we could just have the input. They could develop the survey questions, and I guess that's the question I have. How we want to do this appropriately? Do we need to bring the questions back before the board for approval before they go out?
If that's what's contemplated by your motion, I think just state that is the fact, and if the second accepts that, then the other thing to do, what I suspect sounds like, would be to identify who the consultant might be and authorize his or her retention.
I think it's whatever the pleasure of the board is in terms of bringing it. Which way do we want our input? I think that was a very good point that Irene raised. That's probably not the best thing in the world, is to put it all into someone else's hands. So do we want to all provide a question? I know that's been done before, and then let that be compiled and put together appropriately, or do we want to be able to have some feedback into that and have a draft list of questions brought back to us when we meet in 2 weeks?
That was my amendment to the motion.
Yeah, I guess it's the pleasure of the board.
I can understand that, but I cannot for the life of me understand anyone that's developing something like this not coming to the board and asking board members for their input. I mean, that's the only professional way of handling it.
You want to amend your motion then?
I did. I have.
I'll accept it as second.
Okay. Do you have the motion as amended written down?
JJ has the hardest job.
Yeah.
So the motion I have, as amended, is that staff will work with the Board of Trustees to develop questions and ID and work with an independent consultant on developing and administering a survey and reporting back to who that will report back to the Board of Trustees.
Sounds reasonable to me.
That was a nice job of capturing it. I think that was fine. I know that that council suggested identification of that consultant, but can we just start there?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
I've been raising my hand,
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
that's good.
Thank
That's
you,
good.
President Mayor. How much is this going to cost? Are we going to put a cost because I think the public wants to know how much we plan on spending on this consultant.
So I think that's important too. At the next meeting, maybe we've all submitted some questions to, let's pick somebody in the staff. Maybe somebody can decide, maybe Don or someone would come up with our questions, and then we direct staff to find a few consultants. And I don't know if they have to do the RFP process or how that process goes. I'm kind of brand new, but have them present, and then we can choose at a public meeting, maybe the next meeting, who it is that we choose. And then the price will be out there. We'll know what it would cost because they'll tell us their price.
I think actually that's
Go ahead.
Okay. I think that that's actually helpful because we can guesstimate on an amount,
Yeah.
or we can ask staff to explore what the price would be while we're developing the question list. So at the next meeting, we would review not only the questions, but the options for consultant, and we'd make decisions on both at that time. So that would be one way to get at Trustee Ruggiero's question about cost.
Could
I may address
yes.
Trustee Smith's question a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry. My voice usually carries pretty well. Regarding the, you said you were wondering if there had to be an RFP process. Now, I'm not as familiar, being here for the first time in a long time, with the board policies and so forth in regard to that. But I understood previously that there was a price if it was under that price that the or if there was a sole source or something like that for this that we wouldn't have to go to the RFP. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, it is.
It's professional services.
Yes. We can spend that money. Okay, are we ready to vote?
We need it repeated.
I would have to add one sentence to what she's going to say, which is to work with the Board of Trustees to develop questions and to put together a cost estimate of working with a consultant to implement the survey or to interpret the results.
I don't know if I want to accept.
Oh, stop.
I'll accept it as a second.
I think so.
Careful.
So the motion is that staff will work with the Board of Trustees to develop questions on a potential survey, and at the next meeting, bring back a cost estimate and possible independent consultants who can finish developing and administering a survey on the characteristics the community is looking for in a superintendent and report back to the Board of Trustees.
Beautiful.
How would I say?
Let me just see by a nod if the staff understands what we're doing. Okay.
Well, Kristen will understand.
Yeah.
So we have a motion. And
Okay.
I seconded the motion.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You're opposed?
No, I'm in favor. Aye.
You almost got opposed there.
Sorry.
Okay. Carries unanimously. Okay.
Have a small break. A 2-week break.
Yeah.
Like about a week.
Yeah. Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, we'll take a 15-minute break.
Oh my God.
Dinner is across.
We'll call the meeting back to order. We're on 6.05. Chief Operation Officer.
Good afternoon, Pete Etchart, Chief Operations Officer. And I'll wait for the. There it is. All right. Today I'm going to give you a brief update on enrollment growth and funding. It's been a while since I've been in front of you on this item. Unfortunately, I was scheduled to do this back in the end of February, early March, and before I decided to fall off my bike. So I thought it was probably a good time to kind of give it to you now.
The decision. Oh, good.
I've been in front of quite a few community groups kind of giving this presentation, and I don't ever want to get too far ahead of giving you the same information. Obviously, I would want to be giving it to you first. But a lot of this you've already heard many times, so I'm going to kind of go quickly through this. I only have just a handful of slides. The first few you've seen before, just as an overview really quick, that in 2019, based on the consensus forecast as put together by regional planning, right now that consensus forecast shows about 4,400 students coming to the Washoe County School District. And to take care of the needs we have right now, and include the growth that's coming, it's about 5 new elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and 1.5 high schools, with the half being in addition to DeMonte Ranch High School. If we fast forward to 10 years out to 2024, that's 9,000 students approximately cumulative, and that's 8 new elementary schools, 4 middle schools, and 2.5 high schools. So this you've seen before. Now the consensus forecast, again, was done actually before the Tesla announcement, but they do factor growth into their growth forecasting. But I know if you talk to economic development folks, they think this is very conservative. Hard to say, but this is scary enough on number by itself.
How do you feel, Pete? What do you think?
I think that economic development oftentimes is very, they shoot for the moon. They think there's a lot coming. But, when I was at SB 411 last week, Mike Kazmierski actually said that, he's anticipating 5% growth for 5 years in a row. We've only once in the history of Washoe County ever hit 5% growth, at least in the last, many decades. So if that's true, that could be multiples of what I'm showing you today, but I think that's probably a little aggressive. So I think these numbers are probably close. I hope they're close. And then this consensus forecast will actually be updated next year by regional planning. So going 2016, probably around May, these numbers should be updated. So this next one you've seen also, this is the last slide you've seen before. This basically just kind of puts together those numbers that I just showed you, the number of schools we need, puts kind of a rough cost in today's dollars to them, and shows that over the next 5 years, up to 2019, we're talking about $400 million in today's dollars again of school needs. And if you go all the way out to 2024, the next 9-10 years, you're talking about $609 million worth of new schools that we would need. So this is something that you haven't seen before, but I think you probably know it. This is the projected Washoe County School District bonding capacity. This is with the rollover bond extension that was approved by the legislature. This is the bonding capacity that we have. Now, Tom Szynski, being the very diligent CFO, has worked on restructuring and refinancing of this debt. So we have options with this. I mean, we can move these numbers around and say, but any way you move them around, it doesn't change the total number. So when you look at it, it's about $180 million up through 2023. So if you take those 9 years, $180 million divided by 9, you're basically coming up with $20 million a year. That's what the rollover bond does for us in Washoe County, $20 million a year. And we'll talk more about that number, but we could change these numbers around, but this is the bonding capacity that we have. So if I put both of those together, I take the needs that we just talked about, I take our bonding capacity, and I kind of put it all together in one slide. This is what this kind of shows. So if you look at the top row, you have 5 years going out to 2019, through the end of 2019. The reason it says $50 million for school repair, we're figuring $25 million a year, but you as a board have funded through 2017. Unfortunately, it's not $25 million a year, but we are funded through 2017. So 2018 and 19, there's the $50 million. So you keep going across, there's the new schools of $400 million. So a total need of $450 million. I add up that bonding capacity I showed you in the slide before. You've got a deficit of $365 million. The second row does the same thing. There's the needs through 10 years. There's our bonding capacity. There's how much of a deficit we have, around $500+ million.
Now, is that, excuse me, but is that, if we, say we took out a $20 million bond and didn't build anything, just put it in the bank and accrued interest, that's not figured in that?
That is our total bonding capacity out of the property tax revenues that we gain. That's all we have. Okay. And that's really our only sustainable large revenue source besides government service tax, which is around $2.5 to $3 million a year, which we use for our emergency projects and keeping our schools going and our environmental assessment type or asbestos and those type of programs. This is the only funding source we have. So we have basically, and that's, I think it's really important for the community to know this, we have $20 million a year. And this next slide, I think is probably the most important slide. This is the one I really wanted to show you today. This kind of puts it all together in one slide. And I actually kind of borrowed this slide because we've been working with the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada, and he's been one of our biggest champions. And I'm talking of Mike Kazmierski, the executive director for EDON. And he put together this slide, and I think it really summarizes it. Now, the $500 million I told you, you're going to see on the right, he shows a $900 million gap. Well, he added some other things in there. The thing he added was the top one. the inflation and the cost of bonds. I mean, there's a cost of that, and we all know that inflation is going to happen over the next 9-10 years. As I said, the numbers I showed you were in today's dollars. Mike's kind of projecting that out with a 7% inflation and cost of issuing the bonds. That even may be low. I mean, we're hearing some people saying it could be 10 to 12% over the next few years and then maybe level off. We don't know. So any way you look at this, it's a big number. But the one thing I really want to stress on this, if you look at that on the bottom where he has that red line going across and it points down at the extended bonding authority, that's what the rollover bond did for us. That red line is what is now funded. And it just, as you see, it covers our maintenance and renovations, as Mike's calling it, or we call it repairs and renovations to our schools. So that $20 million a year is going to help us to maintain our existing schools. Not to build. And, that's what we were fighting for with AB 46. We said we need $20 million a year, and we were fighting to get that money to maintain our schools. So now we have the bonding money to do that, but it doesn't show anything. Everything above that red line is not funded. So that's what SB 411 is really talking about, finding an option for us to deal with growth and building new schools. That's the gap that we're missing here in Washoe County School District. And I just think this chart kind of summarizes it. Same numbers I showed you before. There's a number of new schools we need. There's the cost. But again, he's just added an inflation cost to it. So bottom line, and it's going to, like I said, I'm going to keep this short and sweet today, but this is our message. And this is, again, is extremely conservative, but our current need is $70 million a year. That's for the critical repair of our schools, the renovation, and growth. And available, again, it's $20 million with a new rollover bond extension that was signed by the legislature. So the shortfall, and this is, again, minimum, this is based on $500 million, is about $50 million a year. And so the last part I just want to kind of talk about today, and I'm going to be back. I mean, I realize it's been a long gap, so I was gone, but I'm going to keep coming back with more information. I want to make sure that you guys are apprised of where we're going. Our growth committee is meeting weekly. We've been meeting weekly since last June. In fact, now we're meeting more than once a week. We meet as a group once a week. We meet with the Office of School Performance and the area superintendents once a week. So we're really having a collaborative effort on where we're going with growth, because this is a huge issue, as we know, for our district. So the first one I have on here is legislature. As you heard from Lindsay Anderson, SB 411 is active right now. We're very supportive of that. We're hoping that there'll be some great communication and dialogue with the community about how do we solve this problem. And I look forward to meeting with that committee, if it is formed through SB 411, to actually show them all the numbers and get into great detail about the needs that this district has for facilities. There's a lot of bills out there that could have an impact on us, and obviously Lindsay's following them, and she talked about it, whether it's class size reduction or Ready by 3, all those have impacts on our facilities. And so we're going to continue monitoring those bills and how those impact our facilities. The second one, enrollment projections at individual schools. Trustee Frankel mentioned that the regional housing study that regional planning is undertaking now, and we're really excited about that. Until that's ready, and possibly by the end of this year, Randy Baxley, our demographer, is working on this item right now. And he's working with regional planning, so they're going to be good numbers. They're going to be more defined as regional planning does their work. But what we're doing is I showed you these numbers about how many students are coming to the district, okay, based on consensus forecast. But what Randy's doing and what regional planning is going to refine is taking that down to the school level. I mean, how many kids are coming to that Damani Ranch area or Spanish Springs, are going to be going to Brown Elementary School? So that's where he's taking it down to that level right now. And so we've got some pretty good numbers. We're developing them. We're reviewing them right now as a group. And as we get these refined, we'll be back to you with them. And the most important part we're probably doing right now is we're actually gathering input from the schools. It's not just our the area soups or the operations team. We're getting information from the principals, from those that are really there in the schools. So I presented actually here a few weeks ago at A&S, and so all the principals heard the same message at the same time about where we are with growth. They heard kind of the longer version of this presentation, which you've heard before. And then we met with them individually as groups, as high school principals, middle school, elementary school principals, and got a lot of their feedback. And those schools that are really have the highest capacity issues right now, we're going to be going out to those schools and actually touring those schools, talking to the principals, getting their input about, can they house more students? What are some options? And so we're really gathering that information. And as we put all this together, we're going to be back to you with kind of what we found out and what the options are as we go forward. We know that we're in for some hard years, right? We don't have the money. And even if the money came tomorrow, there's, as I've told you before, there's quite the gap to build the schools. So how are we going to get from here to there? So those are the options we're looking at. And Bryn LaPenta has done a great job of putting together a survey that's actually going out to those principals to ask about the very many items that impact them on growth and how they can handle more students or not handle more students. So I just want to kind of leave you with that. I don't have any specifics for that today. I think it's probably premature to get into specifics on that, but I'll be back soon with that. So any questions?
This is a dumb question. How long does it take to build a school?
An elementary school is about 1.5 to 2 years. A middle school can be 3 to 4. A high school can be 5 to 6. It depends. I mean, we're going to try to speed those processes up, but it's a very time-consuming process to build.
If we got the money tomorrow, we're still. Good luck.
If you look at the fact, with SB 411, if we got on the ballot of 2016 in November of 2016, so now you're starting to say 2017, we start collecting money, whatever that may be, and then you add the time on to build those schools, you're really talking 2020 before you're going to have kids walking into a brand new school. So we've got some years here that we have to come up with solutions, and that's what we've been trying to tell the community. We need to start this process now. In fact, we probably should have started it. Well, we have. I mean, you know as well as anybody. We went to SB 154. We went to AB 46. But this is what happens, unfortunately, when you have a series of no votes. Sooner or later, it's going to come back on you. And to me, now it's coming back on us. And we're going to be facing some very hard decisions. And now hopefully the community will gather around us as we go into SB 411 and whatever that means through the rest of this legislative session and into 2016 ballot.
Question: when we build new schools, are we going to look at a new architecture design, or are we going to use the same ones that are most recent? It seems like every time they go through it, they get a different design.
You always want to get the input as well as you can from obviously what's working now and from the principals working in schools. I can tell you this, and we'll definitely be addressing that issue. We have the last middle school that was built was approximately 2008-9, which was DePoli. We still have those plans. It was a whole process that went through in building DePoli. I think people still recognize that as being a very good school. So maybe that could be looked at and using as a base to base a middle school off of. At the same time, we had an elementary school that was being designed that was going to be built in Sparks, and then when the recession hit, and we never built the school. So we have basically the educational specifications and plans for an elementary school. We do not have anything for a high school. The last high school we've been going back into North Valley, Spanish Springs, Damonte Ranch. So we're talking it's quite a while. So I would say on elementary and middle school, we're in pretty good shape to start off. High school, we've got more work to do.
These ones with the big hallway, the elementary schools have got that great big hallway. It's like 2 stories up with glass all the way. Man, what a waste of space that is. And it couldn't be ideally heated.
But you're talking to an engineer, so engineers just want to build little boxes and keep everything efficient. But I think the architects would probably argue that, there is a value to that. So, but I think, we will definitely be looking at that. And I think one of the keys that I've heard from capital projects is that when we build new schools, we have to have basically a building block type of school. And what I mean by that is that you can take components and make them fit the site rather than taking a cookie cutter building model and making the site adapt to that school. And I think that, Worcester was a great example of that. We had a very hilly site way back when they built that school. Not Worcester, I'm sorry, McQueen. And you basically had to fill the whole site in to make that school fit on that site. So I think that what we're looking at in the way schools are built now is that you can take those components and move them around in certain ways to make them fit the site. Because it's going to be tougher and tougher, as we all know, getting land for these types of schools.
And, like Clayton Middle School, they took a California design and just plopped it in where Clayton is, and they've had to put 5 roofs on it because it shifts. The whole thing shifts. And so they even tried putting a rubber type patching job on it. Lasted 3 years.
I think that the first thing I know I've heard from staff is let's say we use the Dipoli model, and I'm just saying if we use the Dipoli model, the first thing you do is obviously you meet with the staff, you meet with the site facility coordinator and the principal, what works and what doesn't work, and you obviously always try to improve the plans. However many times you build that school, you're going to keep improving on it based on what worked or what didn't work.
Teachers want windowsills to grow plants. Yes.
I think he had his hand up first. Okay. Single entry, all the things that we talk about today, do we own the plans for the schools that we've built?
Yes, I believe we own the
So we can
plans.
just
They
go
are
and
ours.
get a construction company to build off of this. But like Worcester, that's got to be a nightmare for a single entry. So that wouldn't be a plan that I think we would want to use right off the top.
High schools, like I said, we're really starting from scratch. And I think in a lot of ways, it's going to depend, to me, on the kind of property we can acquire.
Okay.
I mean, getting 80 acres now to build a full high school with baseball and football and all the different things is going to get harder and harder and harder as we go forward as a community. And we may have to look at alternative type of structures or facilities, for high schools as we grow as a community.
So, Pete, one thing.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
So, and Pete, you and I and Chris, we've kind of talked about this already, but you have cost projections. Those projections, I'm assuming, are for traditional architecture, not for if we took an old Target and Sparks and we were able to convert that. Now, I understand that comes with special problems.
Many.
But I know other districts across the country have done stuff like that. And I don't know that it's feasible for us, but could we expect a cost projection to maybe go down if we decided not to build an 80-acre comprehensive high school? And not every kid wants that experience, and we see that with AACT. Some kids are less interested in football and more interested in technical. So is there room for some play as we're looking in the future?
Yeah.
Right now, we could just talk about it all along. Doesn't make a difference. We still don't got a pot to.
We know.
We're definitely having those discussions, and I don't have an answer for you on that, but absolutely we're going to look at all options because we need to look at those big boxes and whether one's empty and available. I know I've had great discussions with Interim Superintendent Davis about could we have a specialty type high school with those kinds of facilities, and is that the future of maybe part of our alleviating our growth issues? I think there's a lot of options. Do we build a traditional high school? Maybe it's a combination of both. Maybe we're going to have traditional high schools. Maybe we're going to have a lot more specialty schools that don't require all of the athletic amenities or other things that a traditional high school requires. Looking at big boxes, I mean, they're a challenge for sure. I mean, one of the things that we are told all the time by regional planning boards is do not build a school on an arterial because of the traffic issues and lots of issues like that. Well, obviously, most big boxes are on arterials. And so that causes a problem. The schools, those kinds of big boxes aren't built for schools. And so there's a lot of challenges in trying to retrofit those into a school. I could go on and on about big boxes. They're not the easiest solution. They're not ideal oftentimes, but there is an option to them. Maybe it is a specialty type of school where you're saying we're going to have this kind of programming and it would fit just right into one of those boxes, because also a lot of times those empty big boxes are not in the locations we want them. Our growth is out in Spanish Springs or Damonte Ranch or whatever. Not a lot of empty big boxes out in Damonte Ranch or Spanish Springs. Most times those are in a more urban core, whereas not where we're needing a new high school.
Yes.
Thank you, President Mayor. So, compliment to you, Pete. So you are so well spoken when you speak to the media and to our legislators. So I really want to thank you, because I think you make something that's very difficult to understand, but you're able to put it into language that is understandable to the general public. So I want to compliment you on that, and thank you for that. And you've also turned into a wonderful advocate for the school district as far as capital projects, and how much I appreciate that. So my next I have a question. So when will you be coming back? Because I'm getting a lot of phone calls from parents. As you know, Brown Double Diamond is really busting at the seams. So when can we expect you to come back with some info for us?
I don't have a timeline yet. In fact, we just met this morning. Our growth team met this morning, and we were working on a draft timeline. And so I will come back to you soon with that timeline. So I hate to be elusive on that, but I don't want to give you any false perceptions, or definitely the public who's listening to this, any kind of false information on that. We are gathering information right now, and we realize with the end of school and with testing and all the things they've got going on right now, it's not the best time to be reaching out, but we do have some tough decisions to make. And, you know, for 15, 16, we know those high growth areas. We know those schools that are really could be facing some issues next year. So we're really focusing on a lot of those right now to say, let's meet with those highest need schools when it comes to overcrowding and seeing what we can do for 15, 16. So I can say that we're working on a timeline. It'll be very short order. I'll have a timeline to you with kind of what we hope to accomplish with this.
I mean,
okay, I am too.
You said at the beginning of your presentation that you've been meeting with some other community groups lately, giving the same presentation. I just wanted to ask, what are you feeling from those guys when you go? Are we going to people who understand the problem, or are you talking to people who maybe, you know, did not support AB 46 and are winning some battles? Are you seeing a shift in the mindset when they see these numbers, and now they know Tesla's coming, they know Switch is coming, they know Panasonic's coming, QVC out in North Valleys, Amazon in the North Valleys, and I think Zulily's going out there, or something else is going out there, right? Now that they see all this growth, what do you see? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, most of the groups I've been with have been very supportive. You know, they're not the hardest groups, and I look forward to the next round of conversations where we go out to all the HOAs and all the different community groups, because I have not been to a lot of those yet, and that's where I'm really want to go. I want to go to those groups, like you said. It may not be as big as supporters as the ones I've been to. Most all the groups I've been to, and it's probably been, 8 or 9 groups, have been very supportive. They're getting the message. They understand our needs. It's been very enlightening, I think, sometimes for them to see those numbers, because I don't think they recognize that. And the one thing I always stress to them is, over the many decades, property tax has been a great source of revenue for us. I mean, it built all the schools we see here in Washoe County. It's maintained the schools to a certain degree. We've always had that balance. We've never had enough money to maintain and build at the same time, so it's always been this kind of back and forth. But right now, just because of the perfect storm of events, with the Great Recession and property taxes resetting, that we don't have any money now. This is the first time in decades, at least, if not ever, that we are facing a situation where we need new schools and we have no money to build them. And this is completely uncharted territory for us, for the district. And so I think, getting people to hear that message has been great. And it's been good to be at the legislature and also with these community groups, because our issues are not quite Clark County's issues. You heard during the legislature when Clark County said, this rollover is going to allow them to start building 6 or 7 new schools and renovating all these other schools and moving on. And we're saying, yeah, but don't lose the message for Washoe County that we're not in that same situation. We don't have the bonding authority that Clark County has, and we do not receive the same even property tax. I don't remember the exact number, but it's somewhere in the range that Clark County is like 44% higher in property tax than Washoe County is. So even though they have other revenue sources we don't receive, even the property tax is not equal. And so we're trying to get that message out there that we need to find another source, and that's what's been so great about, I think, SB 411, of let's get the community leaders in here. It's not just Washoe County saying we're broke, we need more money, but let the community take the lead on that, saying that we educate them on the needs and let them find the solutions.
Can I share one story about what he's talking about? So many years ago, a few legislators, some current, one not current, and I share this only because I want you to see a change in perspective. And I see this among my crowd of people changing in perspective. Knocked on doors, even in Hawthorne. That's where we actually started. We met at the McDonald's in Hawthorne to get the property tax cap initiative signed. The 3%, right? Yeah. On your primary residence. I actually really supported that. All my investment properties, I pay whatever it is. But in the last few years, right, and I'm seeing this amongst conservatives who also supported that, and then the reason why I asked you the question I did was because I'm seeing a shift. And you know what? If I could go back and change it, I might not have spent 4 weekends tirelessly knocking on doors had I had known then what I know now, right? And I think that's where politics and education sometimes cross a line. It's very sensitive, right? Because you have to talk about, like Dr. Lamarca said, and Ben, is all of those little people, right? Those aren't statistics we're talking about graduating. Those are real kids, right? Flesh, blood, different culture. They speak languages. They can write. They play sports. Some go to Gonzaga. One's going to UNR. And that's why I asked the question, because I'm seeing a shift just in my circle of friends, and know that some of my friends are very conservative, more than me. And I'm not confident that we'll get everything that we want, but I think that there is room, and people in our community are starting to say, holy cow, we have all this development coming and we don't have an infrastructure. What good's development with no infrastructure? And that's what we have to provide. So, I mean, it's not entirely relevant to your conversation there, but I just want to throw it out there. You know, if I could take back what I did, I would, but I can't, right? Although I'm trying to buy a new house, which would go to the now current tax rate, but would only go up 3% every year, right?
That's right.
So just for the record, you know, it's just something to think about. I think we are winning hearts and minds.
One of the things I love is that in the legislature, and I really applaud Mike Kazmierski for taking one of the leads on this and being one of our biggest advocates out there, because he resonates with people. Because, you know, we've been talking about economic development, and, you know, hats off to Edon and Truckee Meadows Regional Planning and everybody who's helping in GoEd of getting all these industries coming in here. But now, what are we going to do? You know, and that's the issue. What are we going to do now? Because they're coming. I think that resonates in the community. They're seeing the wood going up. They see the homes being built. And what Mike Kazmierski's message is that if you want to derail economic development, not addressing schools is probably the fastest way to do it. This is probably his number one issue. Because when you start talking about these companies coming, they want to know about the schools. But a lot of the conversations have been about us providing workers to these businesses that are coming. And that's one side of it. But the other side of it is when these people come, they all of a sudden become parents. And they've got kids. And they want to know where their kids are going to go. And for their kids to be going to school in a trailer, basically, let's call it what it is, that doesn't always resonate. Or having team teaching, or saying we've got 9,000 kids coming, but we can't build a new school. That doesn't resonate when economic development. And so Mike has been down there at Carson City pounding that message. And I don't only hear it from him, I hear it from the Southern Nevada economic development people pounding on Southern Nevada, saying we got the same issue. You know, they may have a little bit more money right now to build some schools, but they're still way, deficient in funds to actually address their needs. So that to me is one of the strongest messages I'm hearing. And it's really encouraging that not only economic development, but when we were sitting down there on Thursday, you had the Chamber of Commerce saying, we support this. So you've got the business community, you've got the economic development people, you've got obviously, the community as far as those in the education supporting it. So I think, you're right, it's resonating. And I'm just hoping we can get that out to the general public. That's the challenge.
My really conservative friend, I got a chance to take a golf day. I usually like to go to Vegas, but I got a golf day. And on the U.S. Bank building, there's a big sign that says, "Welcome Switch to Northern Nevada." They had one for Tesla, too. And my really conservative friend says, there's only one problem. There needs to be another banner. We can't get a school for your kids. And that, I looked at them and I almost got in an accident. I was like, what did you just say? But it's really true, right? And so, for what it's worth, I'm glad that we're starting to see some shift there. And I hope when you get to some of those more challenging groups that it continues and we can find a way to do what's right for the kids. Because that's how we grow.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
Pete, thank you.
Thank you. We're nearing time when we're going to lose 2 members, so let's move along here. 6.06, presentation and discussion regarding the policy governance framework of the district for discussion and possible action.
Whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're going to talk about, I think. So good afternoon, good evening. Mrs. Scurry, Policy Coordinator. So initially, when I was asked to make this presentation, it was going to be about the definition or the differences between a board policy and an administrative reg. And so as I thought about that, what that conversation would look like, it kind of expanded for me because I don't think that this board has really had a conversation about what board governance is, and I think that's what we are doing. And sometimes I think I'm sort of pushing it on you without actually getting your feedback. And so I was hoping tonight we can very quickly have that conversation, and maybe have a follow-up conversation in board policy committee meetings as we move forward. So with that being said, a few years ago, Rod Page was our Secretary of Education. He said the effectiveness of school board governance is the single most important determinant of school district success or failure. I happen to believe that. I think you all know how passionate I am about what I do. Your own National School Board Association puts the building of board policies as really second after hiring a superintendent. So what is policy governance? Policy governance is a comprehensive set of documents and records to include your policies, administrative regulations, and others that, when consistently applied, allow the Board of Trustees to guide the district and maintain oversight management of the district's operations and functions, with the end results being student achievement. I truly believe that as well. I guess I wouldn't be sitting here. So what does that policy governance framework look like? So by developing governance framework or developing governance documents that describe and reflect the goals, mission, and core beliefs of the district and of this Board of Trustees, that reflect the initiatives of the strategic plan, that ensure compliance with federal, state, and local laws and regulations, and that ultimately delegate to the superintendent the authority to act, to do her job. No, I'm going to leave it at her. I did that on purpose. So then we also, by developing these governance documents, we are giving faculty and staff clear direction and establishing a system of continuous systems improvement. We're giving students, their parents and guardians, clear direction regarding district rules and processes. And then it also reflects for the Washoe County community as a whole a sense of direction and transparency. Stop me at any time or I'm going to fly through this. All right, so getting down to the nuts and bolts of what we're going to talk about. First of all, board policy. The purpose of board policy is to establish the direction and structure of the district through the authority that's been granted to the Board of Trustees through Nevada Revised Statutes, which is the Nevada state law. Board policies reflect the ideology and values of the Board of Trustees and the district by setting goals, assigning authority, and establishing controls. Board policy has the force of law equal to statutes and ordinances within the district, and they're the means by which the board and the district are really held accountable to the community. So just as an example, and I'm going to show you an example of a reg in a moment, but a board policy, so this is one that we did recently, a couple months ago, distribution and display of informational and non-school materials. So what I've put up here is the purpose statement for that policy, and it just shows that, the Board of Trustees adopts this policy to ensure consistency, to inform our stakeholders about the distribution process and those types of things. So it's sort of an all-encompassing statement, and that's sort of the bottom line reason for having board policy. I've got a lot of notes. So then the next level in the hierarchy, I guess, is our administrative regulations, and they are detailed directions developed by the superintendent to implement board policy. They tell the how, the whom, the where, when things are to be done. They assign the specific detail to staff, which allows the Board of Trustees then to focus on the broad issues. And it provides detailed requirements, procedures, and prohibitions under which the district will operate. So then using that same policy, then we have an administrative regulation, and the administrative regulation basically has 4 sections to it. The first is that it sets forth the guidelines related to the policy. And then it has the entire approval authority, so how in this case our flyers and other non-school materials are distributed, so how that works, and then the process in general. So all of that then would be inside the administrative regulation. Makes sense? I put the entire reg in just in case. So then if we go to the next level in our hierarchy, those are administrative procedures. Administrative procedures are really geared towards staff directly. So they standardize practices and procedures used by staff. They assure consistency of task performance and help make employees accountable for reliable results. And then they reflect a combination of past practice, preferred practice, and practical procedures. Any questions on any of that? You're all hanging with me so far. So I'm just going to give you just a quick little background. So we currently have 8 series of documents. We've broken them up into 8 series. Honestly, I don't remember what the 8,000 series ever was, if it ever even existed. So it's just an NA. And that 2,000 series, the Superintendent Administration, for the most part, has already been merged with the Human Resources section. But there's a couple regs still sort of hanging out there that will be moved. So it's still on the list right now. But anyway, so you can see that we cover areas such as community engagement, business and finance, human resources, students in general, which is a little bit different from instruction and academic areas, operations, and then your board governance, which for me is, how does this board operate, and some of those larger umbrella issues, which is like our discrimination we put within your governance structure. So real quick, the process for approving or for revising, reviewing board policies. So as what we've been doing for the last year and a half, and we're getting close to wrapping up at least the initial steps here, is we assign our policies to a particular chief to review. That then includes vetting by other staff, sometimes outside of that office. Lots of our policies, business isn't operating in a vacuum, and neither is school performance. So there's a lot of that. We also have district communities that we talk to. Then they come to the board policy committee for initial review, then your regular meeting for preliminary. 15-day public review always happens. That's mandated by state law. And we do that a couple ways real quick, just so you know. We are posting to our website, so to the district website. Our information technology folks put a banner on Infinite Campus for me. So each time I send out that 15-day, they're taking it and putting it on the banner. So any parents who are logging in get that also. And then, of course, it goes out to, I think my email group is over 10,000 recipients. So when you're the largest employer in Northern Nevada, it's probably hitting a lot of people outside the district as well. So, and I will just add, I am getting a lot more comments now than I've ever received before. So, which I like, but they haven't been bad comments. So when I start getting bad ones, I'll let you know. So then following that, of course, then we come back to you, and generally on a consent agenda for final approval. So what you don't probably know as much about is what we do with administrative regulations, because as you know, they don't generally come to you for approval. So kind of the same, we assign them to a chief or to that office for review and revision. And, we do the same thing. We vet through staff, through committees. I also have, and I'm going to show it to you in a moment, we have I call it the public document review page on our website. So actually, and right now, the administrative reg related to public complaints has been posted there for about the last week and a half. So if anybody has any comments, we are posting so that people can see them. So anyway, so that happens, then it will go, and in fact, as I'll continue using the public complaints regulation as an example, it will go to Superintendent Davis and her group leadership team has already seen it, so that it's actually going to go back to them this Thursday for a final review. And then ultimately the superintendent would approve it. And then we need to get out in a monthly report to you so that you can see them. Sometimes I will bring the regs to you so that you can see them. The student uniforms, as we were changing that policy over, I did, post that so that you could see. We weren't losing the content. We were just sort of shifting it to follow this process. So that's how that works. And I'm not going to go into all the other documents, but if you ever, want a history of all that, we can certainly talk. Okay, so JJ, if you could help me for just a moment, I just want to show them really quickly. If you could show them that community public document review page. As you can see, there are 5 pages right now where people can get to your documents. If it wants to work, there we go. So anyway, so our public document review page will have, if it was to come up, what you would see would be, there we go, an area for public comment for board policies. So assuming that the people that are coming up following me get preliminary approval tonight, by tomorrow they'll all be posted on this page, and with the deadline for when they need to get it back to us for approval. I always keep a link so they can get into board docs, and also that Office of the General Counsel's policy coordinator is actually my email automatically. The public complaint has been a big deal, so I've posted it because I've sent it out to those complaints. That's why it's already up there for review. And then right below that, administrative regs. So as we continue looking at regs, they go up there as well. And I've been letting those committees know, pass this on to your parents so that they know that this is here, because it's difficult to communicate that. So that's that. JJ, if you would go into the About Us section, or to the questions, comments, concerns. There we go. So anyway, so just really quickly, so under About Us, policy and regulation page, that is where you could actually access along the right-hand side any of your policies. I also keep the recently updated policies, and I usually go back 3 or 4 months. So if you're, anybody's wondering what have you done for me lately, it's this long because of the 15 purchasing policies that we recently got rid of. So as we merge them, there's a long list. And then at the bottom, and I have this set up at several places, that is the search engine for our CSI website. So all of I think we're at about 2,200 documents still. Any of those can be searched directly from here, so you don't have to find the CSI page. So just real quickly, I also have developed a page for our administrative regulations and procedures under the community tab, so that people can find those. And then we also have our CSI page, and then obviously under the trustees tab as well, you can reach your policies. So tried to make it really, easy for people to find. And then communications recently gave me a quick link on the front page so that anybody on the front page can find the public document review. They don't have to search for that. So it is a quick link on the front page. Again, really quick, but I just wanted to give you an overview of what we've been doing. So that is that. So the next thing would be, the only reason I put for possible action after this is in case you wanted to give me any direction. So ideas for next steps. So a couple of the things we've been working on. That we've been working on a board governance manual, and that's actually going to go out to you tonight. I have to post it, obviously, so it'll be posted on the policy committee meeting for next Tuesday. So even if that's about an hour and a half meeting. I don't know how much time we're going to have, but I wanted you to have it so you could start reviewing it. The ad hoc committee has met a couple of times, so they've reviewed it. So I wanted to make sure I got it to you. And again, my comment that I made at the beginning, half jokingly but half serious, is I haven't really come to you and said, are you okay with this, policy governance framework? So I'd really like to talk to you about what is currently 9002.1 board protocols, changing that into a board governance protocols to make it more of the overarching policy that would actually then implement any governance manual, and really the orientation manual too, which is sort of your working guidebook. And then I also have a draft policy governance, which would describe, and in fact, Clark County has very similar policies. So in kind of looking at what they've been doing, which would describe what these documents are, what the purpose of them is, so that that's very clear and concise for our community as well.
And you want to bring, and so you want to bring that policy to the policy committee?
Yeah, so next week we have, it's a shortened meeting, so I'm trying to keep it really tight. And I do have public complaints on there, so I don't know how much discussion that will bring. And then we have 2 HR policies, as well as the student advisory committee policies. So those will be on there. And then what I've done is I can't provide any documents to you unless it's posted, unless I provide it to the community. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and posted it as an item on the policy committee meeting next week as a, policy governance framework and creation of a governance handbook. And then depending on how much time we have, if you want to kind of look at it, get an idea of what we've talked about in the ad hoc committee. And then, I'm certainly not expecting next week for you all to go, oh yeah, let's go ahead and move it forward. I think there's might be a couple of discussions. Obviously 3 or 4 of you haven't even seen it yet. So, but that's my plan, is to bring it next week. You're going to get it as you get all of them. They're all going to be in board docs. and then we can go from there. And you can tell me what you like and what you hate. And, you know, honestly, after Nashville, I was prepared to rewrite it, but I thought, okay, I might be stretching it a little bit, so I'll go ahead and let you see it, and then I'll come back and say, okay, now I want to rewrite it. So that's where I'm at with that. Now you may ask questions, comments, or
questions,
concerns.
comments.
Sorry, I asked my question early. Forgive me, I didn't wait for the changing of the
You know what?
slide.
I forgive you. Next time, though.
Yes.
Just a quick comment.
Yes.
I just want to thank Ms. Scurry for your passion and your commitment to this process. You really have been a self-starter, and we don't usually have to direct you. You come back and say, hey, I think we should go here, or we should go here. So I really want you to know how much I appreciate that. And thank you for your hard work and commitment.
Thank you.
It shows.
Sometimes to the chagrin of staff, I probably drive them all nuts.
They're not disagreeing.
They're all nodding. Anyway, that's all I have. All right, great.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along to 607. Discussion on preliminary approval of the proposed deletion of board policy 4133, travel for school district employees for possible action. Oh boy, you guys are up again.
President
Dale
Mayors,
and Tom.
Interim Superintendent Davis, members of the board. Again, for the record, Tom Szynski, Chief Financial Officer, and with me, our outstanding controller, Gail Carson. This is the second of the three-step policy review process of this item, having already been in front of the Board Policy Committee. And given that it's been reviewed once before, in the sake of time, I'll just open up for any questions or move for action. Or I guess this is the second step, so we need to bring it back a third time.
Any questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion, then.
I move the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval to the proposed deletion of Board Policy 4133, travel for school district employees, and initiates the 15-day public review period.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. So carried unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, discussion and preliminary approval of the proposed adoption of Board Policy 7200, digital learning for possible action. Ed and Robert.
Well, good afternoon, trustees. Apologize in advance, I sound like a frog, but I will try and get through this. We're here for preliminary approval as well, step 2 of the digital learning policy. In the first meeting, we really didn't get any requests for changes to the policy. It was mentioned that we reference existing policies, which are in here now. And I just want to make one other point, that this policy by itself will not trigger something like a BYOD program or student email. That would come from another place. Basically, IT is not going to say, we're giving all students email addresses, or we're going to start a BYOD program. This just kind of lays the groundwork for, if the district decides as a whole to do something like that, that we're behind technology in 21st century learning.
Mr. Rosenberg.
At the university for years, they gave the kids university email addresses. Then they stopped, and the kids now have their own individual ones. What's the pros and cons?
Well, definitely different age group.
Okay.
So, college age, you're more of an adult and you're considered responsible. K through 12, we have many state, local, federal guidelines we have to abide by for safety, security, privacy, that type of thing.
Okay. I should have thought of that myself.
Any other?
Teacher, for God's sake.
Ms. Frankel.
I was ready to make a motion.
Okay, I'm ready for it.
I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval to the proposed adoption of Board Policy 7200, digital learning, and initiates the 15-day public review process.
I second.
Second, a third, however.
You can't second technology.
one.
I just can't let that happen. I just can't let that happen.
Not after that question, you guys.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried with Lisa absent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for making those changes.
Okay. 7.01, possible executive session.
We have one more policy.
Oh, 609, I'm sorry.
Let's get her done.
Discussion and preliminary approval of the
Let's do it.
proposed revision of board policy 3280, gifts, grants, and donations.
Oh, it's an expedited process that we just moved forward.
Yeah, that's right. Formally entitled Acceptance of Gifts, Grants, and Requests, and the deletion of board policy 3272, donations, and board policy 3280.1, grant applications for possible action.
So move.
Second. Good go.
You better wait till we vote.
Okay. Moved as written here.
Yes, move.
Okay.
I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval for the proposed revision of Board Policy 3280, gifts, grants, and donations, formerly entitled Acceptance of Gifts, Grants, and Requests, and the proposed deletion of Board Policy 3272, donations, and Board Policy 3280.1, grant applications, and initiate the 15-day public review process.
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So carried. Let the record show unanimously. Now, closed executive session.
You're welcome, Kristen.
Okay, so we're back to order. Board member requests for future Board of Trustee agenda and agenda items. None. Let the record show none.
Oh, you know, I did have.
Well,
You got me, and I did the same thing.
twins. Okay, go ahead.
Review and audit of our legal department. A discussion on how that process will go.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just going to say that we consider at a future date, which probably not what the chair was saying. This upcoming board meeting, especially in this phase, to really discuss just our legal issues. Basically, cool down.
It'd be the two of you. And let's not use the word audit because people are getting their hair up straight. What we really want to do, or we should do, is take the greater city schools, and have them audit maybe illegal and several of them on, like they did business and they did business, and 5 of them, and put them all together and have it done instead of just one.
Okay. So
What do you think of that? Well, it was just a request. We'll change that to review by greater. Huh?
We should be reviewing our departments. I mean, we do that anyway. Am I right? That we review our departments, so it's just saying we're going to.
Well, see, she's got an audit scheduled for 2017 of the legal department, but it isn't what we want. We wanted greater schools. They came in with stuff. The buses are parked on the wrong side of the street and stuff. It's really a thorough look at the operations of the legal department.
And it needs to be, whatever departments they are, it needs to be relevant and specific to those departments. I think that's the kind of thing that's
Yes.
helpful.
How can we do better in this particular department? We need to be relevant and specific to.
Yes.
It's not about catching anybody doing anything. I can't be any more impressed with our staff.
No.
I mean, the school district staff has really been tremendous. It's just about how do we help? How do we continue to help and keep staying good?
And really, people come to me and say, when are we going to get our chance with greater schools looking at our operation like plant facilities did? They most people want that, want ways that they can improve. Don't you think?
Mr. Malloy,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think I should enter a comment. In light of Trustee Ruggerio's suggestion and the other discussions, I don't know if the board is aware. We had prepared draft agenda items for those kinds of things.
Yes.
You're talking about things like a specific contractor or a consultant. I think it's better to be more generic. The point is you want a review of the legal office, and we can get down to specifics with respect to what third parties might be engaged to do that and how in a future meeting soon enough, if that's the pleasure of the board. And I can write agendas suggested for those things. Now that I've been employed, so to speak. So I just want to try to be more generic, if that's possible.
Isn't greater schools? We don't pay for that, right?
Yes.
I thought we switched off.
Oh no.
Didn't. I thought that Morrison went and worked for them on some audits, and we got it balanced off. No.
No. We're off task.
Yes, we are, and I want to point that out. We're getting beyond the actual purpose of this agenda item, which was to propose future agenda.
So my agenda was more looking at our whole legal equity as a whole, which we could include the trustees suggestion as well as so we've done some things. I'd like to see what we could forward for this year. So I like that future agenda, special meeting with whatever sooner.
The other, and our next meeting is our success. And that's next Tuesday, right? And it's at Hug High School, right? And it's at 5 o'clock, right? 5:30. Hug High School.
The student advisory board and then the students talk. We have policies at 2, and then student advisory boards at 4. Okay, and then 5:30. Now, if we are, and if we end up having a special meeting, something can we do that like one as well? We get one available.
Task on our work is this is your advice.
Well, are you talking about setting a time? You mean? Yeah, I'm not sure that's off task necessarily. Talk about a date. That's not too far afield. But I mean, you're just talking about it in principle as when these agenda items can be heard.
Right? I asked her what time the next meetings were, and it's on here.
Okay.
And then our next.
So with that, I'm sorry, I just want to see the paper. If you set something up, I'm trying to see if we did it. Since we're spending the afternoon together next Tuesday, if we did it a little bit earlier Tuesday afternoon, would that work for everyone?
It starts at 2 with student advisory. Board is at 2.
You understand that's going to require posting of this agenda item.
And we may not even, that may not happen. It just has to be working if it does. But we can't post unless we know before it.
Okay. And our next meeting announcement, April 28th at 2 p.m. in the boardroom. Okay. Meeting adjourned.